Halloween night in Shibuya kicked off with excitement as two young men wearing frog hats enthusiastically live-streamed the bustling festival atmosphere around them. Crowds of costumed people flooded the streets, creating a vibrantly colorful scene, but beneath it all, a brewing chaos began to spark. As amidst the joyful crowd, scattered figures mysteriously collapsed on the sidewalks, looking utterly exhausted. A few passing tourists curiously asked if that young man was having a medical emergency, but their companion nonchalantly assumed it was just immersive roleplay. The horrifying truth was instantly revealed when the fallen figure raised his head with glowing red, sinister eyes, exposing a blood-stained face and a manic smile that sent shivers down everyone's spine, turning the lively atmosphere into instant chaos as the surrounding people realized the danger and fled with terrified screams. Without a moment's hesitation, the monster in human skin lunged and tackled the young man in a prisoner costume to the ground, using frantic strength to overpower the poor victim. A girl dressed as a police officer standing nearby fearfully checked on her companion, but the young man under attack only managed to yell a warning for her to run away immediately. The predator slowly stood up with black smoke billowing from his mouth, flashing a demonic smile and uttering a disgusting threat for the little girl to come play with him, leaving the girl rooted to the spot with eyes wide in terror, silently and hopelessly praying that this wasn't real. In the midst of imminent danger, a black-haired young man suddenly appeared and delivered a devastating flying kick from above, striking straight into the monster's head and knocking him down instantly. Witnessing their attacker defeated, the police and prisoner costumed couple were left astounded and hastily thanked the benefactor who had just saved their lives. Ignoring the thanks, the young man with a resolute gaze immediately shouted, demanding they leave the area quickly to save their own lives. Realizing the gravity of his warning, the two of them supported each other and ran away fast, leaving the lone hero standing in the middle of a street fraught with danger. The surrounding scene had now become a literal nightmare as the panicked crowd trampled over one another to escape the frenzied predators. Suddenly, all the giant screens in the plaza suffered severe static before displaying the image of a mysterious masked figure smiling wickedly down at the crowd. He casually asked everyone if the moonlight tonight was beautiful, a deeply sarcastic question amidst the suffocating atmosphere of death, then ordered all those present to dance with him in madness, turning the streets of Shibuya into a stage of blood and tears. The ringleader's declaration acted as a detonator triggering absolute chaos, officially kicking off the most terrifying and bloodiest Halloween night ever. Facing the provocation of the one named Exeedra, our protagonist gritted his teeth and swore to stop this insane plan at all costs. Turning back time to 3 weeks prior, we find Kanzaki Yuto, the 20-year-old deputy director of the Exeedra orphanage, diligently hanging laundry in the morning sun. While absorbed in his work, Yuto suddenly paused upon hearing his name called from behind, his eyes wavering slightly with curiosity. He hastily crouched down and anxiously asked what was wrong when he saw 2 kids from the orphanage tearfully running toward him for help. The little one sobbed and tattled that Takeshi had hit him, while the other boy was just as vocal, loudly explaining that it was a punishment because Hiroto was too busy playing and wouldn't do his homework. Yuto gently hugged the crying child and then asked Takeshi in a stern voice whether he still remembered the things he had taught him. He calmly explained to his young pupil that a real man only uses his fists to protect the people he truly loves. His eyes looked straight at Takeshi as he posed a thought-provoking question. Could someone who always aspired to be a hero like him bear to strike someone weaker than himself? Flashing a radiant smile and giving an encouraging thumbs up, Yuto advised the boy to learn restraint and save his strength only for the moments that truly mattered most. Little Takeshi curiously brought up the past, mentioning that Yuto himself used to be a brawler, making him just smile and admit the truth about his reckless youth. Returning to the death-filled present, the Shibuya sky was dyed crimson, signaling the beginning of a cruel festival for the awakening of humanity. Yuto smiled with satisfaction after giving his meaningful advice about strength and protection to the children at the orphanage. But that smile suddenly vanished when Takeshi mischievously asked if the person he truly wanted to protect was Chika, causing Yuto to blush and awkwardly deny it. Both kids pushed their luck, teasing that if he didn't confess soon, the opportunity would slip away the moment Chika graduated and left this place. Yuto yelled, demanding they be quiet at once, but the panic on his face inadvertently betrayed the true feelings he had been carefully hiding. Right at that moment, Amatsuki Chika, a gentle-looking 12th grade girl, walked into the orphanage yard carrying a bag of groceries and curiously asked what everyone was doing to be so loud. The kids immediately ran over to greet Chika and didn't forget to repeat Yuto's recent lesson about fighting for the one you love, causing him to shriek that he didn't say that at all. Chika looked at Yuto with a highly suspicious gaze and scolded him, asking what kind of weird things he was teaching to ruin the kids. She sternly demanded that no one fight regardless of the reason, to which Yuto could only nod vigorously, and quickly changed the subject by asking what special dish was on the menu for tonight. Seeing the deputy director's clumsy demeanor, Chika gave a soft, forgiving smile, dispelling all the tension with her usual warmth. The whole group happily went inside together upon hearing her announce that their favorite curry was waiting, enjoying the last peaceful moments before the storm hit. Chika smiled gently and promised to save lots of meat for Hiroto, making the pre-dinner atmosphere incredibly warm and filled with joy. Watching from behind, Yuto smirked slightly and silently marveled that Chika now knew how to smile much more than during her dark past. Memories from 10 years ago suddenly rushed back, recalling the first day the director brought a small, timid girl to introduce her to all the kids in the orphanage. He gently placed his hand on the little girl's shoulder and announced that from now on Chika would officially live with everyone, while instructing the kids to treat her very well. However, the arrival of the new member sparked malicious whispers as the children began to realize that her father was the mastermind behind a horrific crime. Gossips about her being a murderer's daughter and doubts about whether it was safe to let her stay here constantly surrounded the poor child. Amidst those cruel, derogatory remarks, young Yuto with his sharp eyes suddenly called out, bringing the tense atmosphere to an abrupt halt. The director immediately shouted for everyone to stay quiet, and then turned to offer a sincere apology to Chika for letting her endure such hurt. The tiny girl just bowed her head and quietly replied that she was fine and had been used to these harsh reactions for a long time. Watching a tear roll down her forced smile, the viewer's heart tightened upon hearing her tell herself that someone branded a murderer's daughter like her didn't deserve to be happy. Young Yuto stood rooted to the spot with a stunned gaze as he witnessed Chika being brutally ostracized on her very first day entering the orphanage. The director quietly led the poor girl away to escape the scrutinizing stares, leaving a haunting silence in the hearts of the remaining children. 10 long years passed. Yuto now strolled slowly across the orphanage yard, sighing softly as he realized how much time had changed everything. A stone was suddenly thrown, bouncing on the ground right at his feet, interrupting the young man's endless train of thought about distant memories. Yuto looked up toward the orphanage gate with suspicion, catching sight of a group of strangers gathering with a hostile and aggressive attitude. The crazed group screamed, demanding he hand over the murderer's daughter right now, while threatening that anyone who protected her would share the blame. Feeling utterly exhausted by this constantly recurring situation, Yuto coldly demanded that the trespassers leave the premises immediately and go back to their homes. But the aggressive mob had no intention of stopping and began to violently shake the iron gate, creating intense vibrations. An aggressive man swung his fist to attack the gate, demonstrating utter hatred toward those trying to shield the poor girl. Facing the relentless assault, Yuto's eyes suddenly flashed with astonishment as he noticed something incredibly unusual unfolding right before his eyes. The fierce crowd frantically battered the gate, screaming for the handover of Amatsuki Chika because they knew for sure she was hiding inside. Yuto furiously shouted, asking the extremists what they were doing, but a grayish hand suddenly thrust a phone in front of his face displaying shocking news. The news reported that the criminal organization Exeedra, led by Amatsuki Taizen, the mastermind behind the school poisoning incident 10 years ago, had just officially resumed operations. Yuto stared at the screen in shock, his breathing heavy as he couldn't believe what he was reading right now. The bespectacled man roared that the story of the boss being dead was just a lie and that his daughter was definitely involved in this too. He aggressively charged forward to attack Yuto, while the young man hadn't even gathered his wits from the harsh truth that had just struck. On the inside, Chika anxiously watched the brawl and wondered to herself what she must do to protect the trembling children behind her. Despite attempts to stop her, Chika stepped outside, causing the crowd to instantly shift their criticism, screaming that the devil's daughter had finally shown her face. Yuto panicked and yelled loudly, demanding Chika immediately go back inside to escape the crowd's frantic rage. Yet she stood firm, spreading her arms to protect everyone, pleading with them to leave because this was an orphanage, defying the shouts ordering her to shut up. The violent mob surrounded Chika, screaming and questioning that she definitely knew something too, and threatened him not to keep hiding the murderer. Suddenly, a flying stone grazed Chika's face, making her clutch her face in terror and sob uncontrollably. while Yuto only had time to scream her name in absolute shock. Shielding the trembling girl, Yuto glared at those bastards with intensely erupting rage, even though Chika was desperately begging him not to do anything reckless for her sake. In a split second, Chika's instruction about not using violence anymore suddenly flashed in Yuto's mind, evoking the image of her crying alone by the river back then. The silhouette of young Yuto with a bloodied and bruised face in the past acted as a reminder of the meaningless battles he used to plunge into, making him clearly remember Chika's tear-filled, agonizing eyes upon seeing him injured, a pain far greater than the cuts on his own flesh. Back to reality, Yuto gritted his teeth to suppress his anger, his eyes flashing with a cold, sharp glare as if wanting to tear apart the cruelty of those besieging him. The mob kept screaming madly, throwing punches in a chaotic protest, believing that everything around was truly turning for the worse. Seeing Chika collapse to her knees in despair, Yuto clicked his tongue and roared for everything to end right here because his limit of tolerance had hit rock bottom. He spread his arms wide to shelter the girl behind him, loudly questioning the aggressive bunch whether Chika had ever done anything wrong to them in the end. Yuto furiously shouted right in the crowd's face that they were playing the victims to insult an innocent girl for the past 10 years. He turned his back to the aggressive man, softly apologizing to Chika for letting her endure this unmerited trauma. With a streak of blood running down his forehead, Yuto's eyes blazed with a fire of anger as he declared that those heartless fools had no right to hurt her anymore, leaving Chika stunned, looking at him with a bruise on her cheek, her heart clenching at the young man's fierce protection. Yuto clenched his fists with determination, telling himself that if they continued to push her into a corner, he wouldn't be able to just stand by and watch anymore. The bespectacled man roared madly, swinging a hatred-filled punch toward Yuto, claiming that anyone harboring a criminal deserved to be punished. The wind-tearing force rushed straight at the target, carrying all the blind rage of someone clouded by vicious prejudice. In a breathtaking moment, Yuto swung his hand to block the attack, his fingers clamping down on the opponent's fist like a steel vice, making the attacker only able to utter absolute shock upon realizing his entire strength had been completely subdued in the palm of his hand. Yuto's eyes suddenly glowed with a mystical golden hue, and he launched a decisive counterattack with a massive punch straight into the enemy's face to end the chaos. Yuto stood tall after the crushing punch, leaving those around astounded at the young man's overwhelming power. With blood running down his face, he coldly declared that the ones truly deserving of punishment here were those miserable bastards. The extreme mob began to tremble in terror, unable to believe the orphanage's deputy director would risk everything to protect a girl shunned by the world. Another aggressive man madly charged forward, throwing a direct punch, screaming to rally his comrades to take down the obstacle together. But Yuto simply tilted his body slightly, dodging the attack by a hair's breadth, displaying incredibly masterful and calm footwork. Instantly, he delivered a lightning-fast roundhouse kick straight to the opponent's head, growling to ask what they actually planned to do to Chika next. Witnessing the fierce resistance, the crowd started backing away in fear, stunned by the threatening return of the Exeedra organization and Yuto's strength. With his eyes glowing a mysterious golden hue, Yuto gritted his teeth and swore that if anyone dared touch Chika again, he would personally crush them all to dust. The entire chaotic scene unfolding at the orphanage gates had been captured in the sight of mysterious figures sitting in a luxurious black car parked on the curb. They silently observed every single move through a surveillance screen, and confirmed that the organization's young lady was truly being sheltered by that young man. Chika trem gam voi vet bam tren ma. Trong dao vong ven loi tien tri vsuc man and jiao qua ko the duan and loi sang mot chuang moi. Jua san vien, and hung kava hung hang gio de du de giuc na de chan yudo. Kuchien tang dan dak dung sung de ui gwin, and hung jie dan ong kan lai bang hong run ray. Tu hoi rot kyok chang tan nian ben thuang nai mang trong min suc man kdgi ma dang so den the. Su zud hien bet ngo qua emoti vien kan sat ku vuk tren chik xc dap cuky de katten ging bao kong kite sung tang bang loi keen trak gay gap. They tin the bat loi, dam nua qua kich voi vang tau che thot den. Bo lai sao lung su han lon vum wa gay ra truact song vien. Yudo kikwe sang lo lang hoi tam tin hin qua chika va nan dok loi zak nan nain hang rang ko van on sao bien ko vo roi. Phia sao tam kin den qua chik exebian, and hung on mat sak lan van lang quan sat mwatrian. Tam ton tin cho and hung buke di teep theo. Kai hai nua kung nao buke tiao veo trong. dam tre no uara dan tit voi and hung loi hoi han lo lang lu an Chiko by thuang hei kong. Chika mim koi tran and lu tre. Trong Yuto chim sao veo dong sui gi vi vik to chuk Exeedra tais su du cha kwa ko de dok zak nan la de chet. On Indian rang date sang tang kai nan ra tuk tai ton kok rang lore to chuk I defy by zoa so hon ton tu lao va muc tu koi kung kwa chung chin la Chika. Vi jayam dok hot hai che veo fong. Lo lang hoi hanzem lu Yuto va Chika ko gap and de gi sao vu exo zat kin hong vo roi hei kong. Ba nu and goi lai trong ven fong. On thang bao rang min du ka phi kan sat phi tang quang tuan tra quan ku vuk ko nhi vien. En hung du dang lo nai han chin la tin dan vi mot nam nui tai shibuya dang fan fat ma tui di dan nia to chuk Exeedra. Yuto gi ngo de chi la en hung kajia dan and theo. Trong kai Chika lang lang cui dao voi guang mat yu de vi mak kem. Doi ban te ko seat chat le vad vei. Surun re biosi lo oro net tom trang bat on kung noi dao don deng ji vio tom tri ko gai tre. Chika bat ngo cat loi thang bao vi vik min si roi koi noi nai. Kim bao kong kai trong kan fong bang chak tiaro nin dong dac. Yuto dap ban dung fat day voi vi mat bang hong. Lan tiang gang hoi ko rang tai sa lai du are quiet din duong dot den nu vei. Ko dao dan jai tik rang chung nao min kan o lai tse chi mang den them nu rac roi va tun thuan cho tat ca mwa nua sung quan. 6 jayam dak ko gang tren and ko bang loi king din rang to chuk I de tuk su sup du nai kai cha ko kwa doi va mwa chuyen de ket tuk. En hung Chika van quiet din bo che ra nagwai trong nok mat. Mak kutiang goi voi theo de bat luk kwa Yuto dang vang vong kap han lang. Yuto tran and 6 jayam dak dang lo lang rang on sed king tra tin hin kwa Chika nai lap tuc. On rao buk kwa en hung gach no trong kyun vien ko nhi vien. Ko gang tim kim bong dong ko gai no jua and hung tan ke. Trong dao Yuto gon gang and hung ka hoi vi vik Chika ko the de che di dao jua luk tam trang dang vio kung bat on nu the nai. Dot nin. On fat giakare du gi du va het lan ten ko kain and they and hung bong den la mat de bao ve le Chika tu luk now. Mot nam nu la mat voi trang fu kyd dang ve quan ko gai tre. Trong du ko kamang kai chat ap dao qua mot Thursday lin tuk Thursday. Ko gai voi doi mat tim rock aro va mai talk vang ki engying dao day tik Thursday roi kat tiang hoi tam dan tin qua 6 kok kong wa ma den. Yuto si chat nam dam. On tam thak mak dam nuinai de zut hien tu bao geo valan tiang chat ven muc dik tuk su qua chung la gi. Kong mot loi jai tik. Ko gai mat tim lap tuc lao toi tan song va are len cho on he bien di truak kai mwa chien tiaro nin toi ti han. En hung Yuto de kip voi vung te chan dung ku de ui luk qua doi fuang. Town and mot chan dong man lan to are kong jan sung quan. Dung truak doi Thursday ko tak du dang kin gak. Yuto Engian rang de chung trong kai ko gai kia lai no nu koi de mia mai ken goi fan exe quan. Yuto by ku de sam set qua ko gai mat tim hat vang ra exe. Luke va cham man den muc on hon ton mat gwin kim sot ko the trong jie lat. They Chika hot hai che toi. Yuto ga len non kan vai yu ka ko fi dung yen tai cho de kong by quan veo vong noi him. En hung nai luke du. Motga den ong trung nien voi guang mat de seo bat ngo zut hien tu fia sao kien Yuto sung so vi su di chien qua en han. Mot ku dam nong ne duk ga tung ra tang veo mat Yuto. Mang theo suc man kan nua du de engian nat y chi chien dao qua on nai lap tuc. Yuto guc na hon ton. Nam bat dong di mat dat trong kai kutan sung lan lung ra len cho Chika fi ju kan ming nu kong muon wa chien ti han. Mak cho Chika gao that goi ten on trong vio vong, nam nu la mat ven the nin thang bao rang chung ko mat tai day chi de ho tong tu Thursday trov. Guang mat Chika lo rov kan hong tot du. Ko bong hong nin and hung kudang bao vei lei min voi mot noi so hai kong the dien ta ton loi. Ga dan ong tok du buk toi voi kai chat ui nium. Nin tang veo mat ko va kat tiang goi tu Thursday bang mot tong jong lan lung day gwin luke. Yuto ko gang guang day chat van dan tin qua en hung kalamat nai. Nan lai la loi dap mia mai rang ho qua tuk van chua gia thea banen. Ko gai mat tim koi rang aro tit lo chung chin la to chuk Exeedra. Den down ko theo men len tu nu cha gwen non qua min lan chua tizen. Ga dan ong de seo quay sang kin trak ko gai mat tim dung ko tui tien tit lo thong tin mat qua to chuk, trong kai yuto bong hong kai na thay tin tuc lin quan den cha qua chika. Nen thay moi noi him dang kin ku, envoy vang nam lay te chika va het lan juk ko hay mao chong che di de tim duong thot then. Then hung ko gai mat tim kong he ko widen de ho roi di de dong. Ko ta lao toi tung ku dam truck dien buk yuto fi gong min chong du jua kan lok tan song du doi. Chung kien yuto dang lu min bao vi min truak and hung kumao mat. Chika chi beat het len ten on trong noi so hai va lo lang tot kum. Could dike no nu koi de qui quiet nin soang nan nan. Ko ta the neen twin bo rang se kong cho fep on dok lam bat cu du gi min muon tai noi ne. Vo tung and hung don the him hok ap che doi Thursday. Ko ta va byong loi mia mai hoi zem rot kyok on lot side the gi ma lai dam bao vi cho 6-2 Thursday kwa chum. On mat yudo chat tiaro nin kien din la thuang. On ki du mat and hung ven dong dac king din rang chika chin la nua ban vio kung qui gia ma on tran tron not. Ko gai mat tim ki thot len loi ton thuang de gia tau. Nai lap tuc ko ta don ton bo suc man veo ku dam teep theo king kong john sung quan nu no tum. Teep tuc don ep yudo bang and hung don tan song ton kok. Ko ta lan lung twin bo rang chin vi tin ban sao nong du ma on se fi chiu dung mot ket cuc tam hai. Trong the doi dao and get tho kai hai guang mat chi kech now trong gang tak. Ko ta dua are loi de doa koi kun yu ka on hei and han chung buk sang mot ben nu kan nuan jumang. Chung kien dien bien tran dao. Gaseo fald kong koi and gak nien thot len rang chang ton nien kia kwa tuk ko kai non kai chan dung duak don tan song kwa shade. Duncan ben, 10 Thursday lin tok du van jutai duim lang dabian. Doi mat sak lan qua Hong Kong roi koi muc tu nu dang ton tin motm mutam him. Trong kai du, yudo voi doi mat ruk sang sak vang bon kung lai de hot hong. On voi quay sang hoi chika dang din lam du gi dai dot. Chi cho ko the, shade lap tuc ap sad va tung mot ku dam sam set truck dien veo mat yudo. Kong queen de lai loi mia mai rang ka Thursday dang o nai truak mat ma on lai dam lo la. Ku are don ton kok kien yudo hon ton mat fong hun. Ko the on by hat vang are xa roi va dap man li song and dat kung jua lan koi bui. Shade dung nint sai zak bat dong qua doi Thursday voi nu koin geo ne. Ko ta the nien byong loi tu ven day cham chok rang lu min ko lo te ket lu on ta lon roi hei kong. And hung nai kai ko ta din roi di. Mot bon te de vet thuan dot gat von len tu dong du nat. Seat chat le ko chan qua shade nu mot chik gong xian kong the tau go. Du mao de du, yudo van engian rang gam len loi the chet chok rang ben and tuet doi se kong de bat cu canal mang chika di koi tam te min. Shade kichik le de ko chu truak su kien tri quat sai ten ma ko ta goi la kafien fuk. Trong kai chika by loi di chi beat gao that van xien bon chung hei dung lai. Voi guang mat dam le de tuet vong. Chika het lan veo mat and hung ko Thursday ac rang muc chi chung kan la ko. Vive xien dung lam tun thuan yuto them bat cu la now nua. Shade delivered a devastating kick to Chika's chest, sending the young girl flying backward in excruciating pain. She collapsed to the ground, her eyes filled with shock as if unable to believe the cruelty of those claiming to be her father's henchmen. The violent impact caused Chika to tumble, her entire body crashing heavily onto the hard ground amidst a cloud of dust. Shade stood looking down from above with a wicked smile, casually making a sarcastic remark that she had accidentally kicked the noble young lady. The perpetrator stood tall and arrogant before the small, motionless figure, showing absolutely no compassion. Witnessing the brutal scene, Yuto gritted his teeth in rage, silently questioning himself about how insane this world had truly become. A piece of old memory suddenly flashed back, recalling the image of Chika's small hands trying to wipe away the stains maliciously smeared on the floor by the children. Back then, the little girl was still smiling while asking everyone to lend a hand, while Yuto could only stand silently watching from afar with a tightening heart. Young Yuto wondered to himself whether Chika truly didn't realize she was being bullied, or if she was just trying to act carefree to hide her hidden pain. The deep crimson sunset fell over the old school, as if signaling that a horrific tragedy had officially begun in Shibuya. A red school bag lay abandoned in a dark corner of the room, evoking the ghost of a past filled with isolation and trauma that Chika had to endure. Young Yuto gently pushed the door open and called Chika out for a meal, trying to bring a little warmth into the cold space of the room. But he suddenly froze upon seeing her small silhouette huddling in the dark corner with a terrifyingly gloomy appearance. Chika buried her face in her trembling hands, painful groans escaping from her chest as if wanting to tear apart the silence enveloping the young girl. Witnessing that heartbreaking pain, Yuto's gaze turned deep, silently promising himself that he would never let her be alone ever again. Returning to reality, the red-haired man grumpily reminded Shade not to injure the young lady, but she only laughed and replied with a half-hearted apology. Shade smirked, asserting that things would go more smoothly if Chika behaved, otherwise she wouldn't hesitate to use violence to enforce compliance. Losing all patience, she ordered the man named Fall to quickly carry the young lady away so they could complete the mission and leave this place. Just as Fall was about to touch Chika, he was suddenly stunned when a powerful, commanding shout rang out from behind. Yuto struggled to his feet with heavy breaths, roaring a steel-clad oath that anyone who dared to harm Chika would never escape his punishment. Shade was astounded and couldn't believe her eyes witnessing Yuto still able to stand up resiliently after a barrage of devastating attacks. With his eyes burning with a mystical golden flame, he roared an oath to crush all of them into level ground right at this very place. Standing alone to face 3 notorious killers of Exeedra, the young man's aura suddenly spread powerfully as if wanting to swallow his opponents whole. Despite that fury, Shade still flashed a mocking smile and asserted that no matter how many times he tried, the outcome would never change. But Yuto instantly shattered that arrogance with a massive direct punch, leaving the enemy barely able to brace themselves in terror to block it. The other 2 men stood stunned observing the fight, the scarred ones silently uttering astonishment at the terrifying transformation of their opponent right before his eyes, while Shade gritted her teeth to endure the pain, silently wondering why this young man's strength had suddenly advanced leaps and bounds to such an unbelievable extent. Her purple eyes suddenly flashed with a mysterious blue light, as if trying to see through the hidden secret within Yuto's soul. Not giving the opponent a chance to counter, Yuto swung his iron fist with a force that tore through the night sky, channeling all his hatred into the decisive strike, creating a fiery collision that shook the entire sky, officially kicking off the bloody vengeance to protect the girl he cherished the most. Shade froze in utter shock as she sensed the terrifying murderous aura suddenly approaching from behind. Amidst the silent space, dust began to billow, signaling a spectacular overthrow about to take place. The scarred guy widened his eyes in panic, hastily screaming to warn Shade to look up to evade the deadly attack. From above, Yuto plunged down like a black lightning bolt, his face distorted in rage alongside eyes glowing a mysterious golden hue. Without giving his opponent even a single second to react, he channeled all his might into a massive punch striking straight into Shade's face with thunderous force. The devastating blow sent her flying far away, causing her slender body to crash heavily against the brick wall behind in excruciating pain. Yuto gritted his teeth and panted, his eyes now holding only the coldness of a predator gradually being swallowed by the Chronos power. On the desolate ground, both Chika and the enemy lay collapsed at the feet of the young man who was radiating a suffocating pressure. Chika weakly struggled to her feet, softly calling Yuto's name with eyes full of deep concern as she saw him gradually turning into a monster. Responding to that anxiety was Yuto's resounding, frenzied roar, asserting that he would crush everything to protect the one he loved. Chika was astounded upon recognizing the familiar murderous aura, silently fearing that a horrific scenario from the past was gradually repeating. She tremblingly concluded that if this continued, Yuto would no longer be himself but would turn into a true monster. The Exeedra group was also stunned, silently wondering in terror whether that surging power was the legendary Chronos. Yuto's eyes burned with a resentful crimson, heat rising steam-like from his chest like a war machine operating at full capacity. He coldly raised his foot, intending to deliver a fatal blow to the one lying on the ground to finish her arrogance once and for all. The brutal stomp slammed straight onto the target with terrifying speed, carrying all the built-up rage accumulated for so long. Shade only managed to groan in excruciating pain as she felt the massive pressure crushing her will and her body. In that breathtaking moment, the scarred man suddenly intervened with a powerful kick that sent Yuto flying to the side, rescuing his accomplice in the nick of time. Yuto paused in surprise, his gaze suddenly shifting as he realized the opponent before him was not simple like the previous ones. The veteran assassin glared and threatened him not to be arrogant because this life-and-death battle was truly just the beginning. Fald lunged forward to throw a direct punch at Yuto with the fierce momentum of an experienced assassin, but the young man calmly extended his hand, stopping that attack mid-air with a steady palm. The scarred assassin smirked smugly, silently despising the opponent who was struggling to resist his overwhelming power. He was certain that a slender body like Yuto's could never hold out for long under this massive pressure. However, Yuto's hand suddenly clamped tightly onto the opponent's fist, creating a horrific gripping force that left Fald unable to move. The attacker gasped in terror upon realizing that he was completely subdued by a strange energy. Amidst the cloud of dust, Yuto's eyes began to glow a mysterious golden hue, radiating the majesty of a god judging a sinner. The intense spiritual energy narrowed into his pupils, signaling the full awakening of the rising Chronos power. Not giving his opponent time to counter, Yuto channeled all his might into a lightning-fast punch straight into Fald's chest, shattering his entire defense, leaving the large man in a pathetic state as he was knocked backward through the billowing dust, officially turning the tide of the battle. Fald stared in shock and terror as he noticed the Chronos energy rising powerfully from the young man he had once looked down upon. Taking advantage, Yuto immediately tackled the large assassin to the ground, using overwhelming strength to lock down any final attempt at resistance. He stood tall and powerful beside the defeated foe who was groaning in pain, his cold gaze like a god executing a sentence of justice. His rage not yet subsided, Yuto continued to use his iron hand to pin Fald to the ground, silently swearing to make them pay for their arrogance. Facing the sight of his comrades being defeated, the red-haired man maintained a calm, mysterious face as he watched Chika frantically running toward him, causing Yuto to narrow his eyes in wariness, silently assessing that the opponent before him carried an aura more dangerous than anyone he had ever met. Chika screamed, demanding the fight stop, but the leader casually raised his hand to order her to obey, treating his presence as completely worthless. But immediately, an iron hand reached out and grabbed his wrist, stopping the insolent act directed at his best friend. Yuto shielded Chika with eyes burning with indignation, solemnly declaring that he would not allow anyone to take her away from this place. Instead of showing annoyance, the red-haired leader flashed a sinister smile and silently praised Yuto as an incredibly excellent specimen that he was searching for. The red-haired leader gripped Chika's shoulder tightly, sarcastically remarking that he didn't expect her to raise such a loyal slave right by her side, causing Chika to scream out in furious denial, firmly asserting that Yuto was absolutely not the trivial kind of person he thought. Amidst the pain, Yuto struggled to his feet with burning eyes, silently swearing to use this unfamiliar source of power to protect the most important girl in his life. But the enemy merely smirked and scoffed, assessing that very desire to protect was the fatal weakness gradually turning him into a puppet exactly as he wished. Without hesitation, Yuto channeled force into his fist and charged straight ahead, but the leader easily deflected that powerful attack with just one hand. With a skillful spinning motion, he used the momentum to slam Yuto down onto the hard ground, displaying a shocking disparity in skill. Looking at Yuto lying motionless at his feet, the red-haired man silently marveled that even when facing death, this young man's heart only directed toward others. He exposed his demonic face hidden in the shadows along with a bloodthirsty smile, radiating a dense murderous aura that seemed to freeze the surrounding space. Despite his multiplying wounds, Yuto surged up once more to plunge into the grueling battle, his breathing rapid in his determination to the end. But the leader simply tilted his body slightly to evade the attack, uttering contempt that his effort truly made him feel utterly disgusted. The red-haired leader suddenly unleashed a massive direct punch to Yuto's stomach, suffocating all his attempts at resistance with overwhelming strength. Yuto only managed to groan in excruciating pain as he felt his internal organs as if being crushed, his glowing eyes gradually fading before the brutal attack. He collapsed onto the desolate ground, while Chika frantically rushed forward, screaming his name amidst the atmosphere thick with the scent of death. The leader coldly offered a fake apology to Lady Chika for making her witness this blood-filled scene of violence. He glared with a cold, sharp gaze, solemnly asserting that anyone who dared to interfere with the organization's mission would meet the end of total annihilation. Facing the enemy's brutality, Chika could only utter a weak denial while her heart was breaking from her own helplessness. Suddenly, an unexpected communication signal rang out, causing the leader to freeze, his eyes shifting as he noticed a change from his superiors. He quietly confirmed his understanding of the new order through the communication device, ignoring the shock clearly visible on the young girl's face. With a heavy step, he prepared to walk away, leaving a terrifying silence enveloping the scene of the battle. Standing silently to observe the dying victim, the scarred guy Fald wondered in terror how on earth a trivial person could awaken such a grand Chronos power. The red-haired leader observed in silence, his eyes clearly reflecting deep thought at the unexpected power Yuto had just unleashed. He coldly ordered Fald to take shade and leave immediately, even though his subordinate was still hesitant about leaving Lady Chika behind alone. He asserted that the Grand Master's order to bring her back was unchangeable and had to be executed as soon as possible. Glancing slightly at the little girl standing and trembling, the head of the Exeedra organization seemed to be silently marking his prey for the upcoming hunts. He issued a polite threat that they would return soon to pick her up, leaving Chika standing frozen in absolute terror. The group of strangers quietly retreated into the darkness, leaving behind a desolate battlefield with Chika kneeling beside Yuto's motionless body. She cried out tragically, begging her best friend to wake up and not leave her alone in this cruel world. In her despair, Chika blamed her own bloodline as the root of all tragedies and silently regretted dragging him down with her. Right at that moment, Yuto's eyes suddenly burst open with glowing pupils, signaling a powerful rebirth from deep within his subconscious. He struggled to stand up even though his body was still battered, quietly listening to Chika's tearful confession and silently bracing himself for the impending storms. Chika continuously sobbed and apologized in endless torment over the disasters she had inadvertently brought upon everyone. Standing before her, Yuto radiated a pure white spiritual energy with glowing eyes full of majesty, like a rising guardian deity. Later at the orphanage courtyard, a middle-aged detective quietly led Chika away to gather more information about the recent horrific altercation. Detective Kentaro Arai sternly questioned her about the strangers who had appeared and claimed to be there to take her away on her father's orders. The image of the 3 Exeedra assassins returned like a haunting ghost of the past tied to her father's criminal reputation from 10 years ago, making Chika fearfully bow her head and struggle to assert that it was truly her first time seeing those terrifying people. The detective's sharp, cold gaze still wouldn't let up. He asked once more with suspicion, wondering if she was hiding anything. Yuto immediately stepped forward with heavy breaths, loudly demanding the detective stop interrogating Chika like a criminal because she knew absolutely nothing. Detective Arai coldly reminded him that this was professional investigative work and warned the young man not to interfere with police duties. Responding with eyes burning with indignation, Yuto demanded that if he was a law enforcer, he should just focus on doing his job well. An outraged Detective Arai grabbed Yuto by the collar, sarcastically remarking that this young man had a really sharp tongue to dare talk back to the police. He leaned in close to threaten him, revealing that his own nephew had also perished in the tragedy 10 years ago, and that he was struggling to contain his extreme anger. Yuto stood frozen before the young detective's blind hatred, clearly feeling the suffocating atmosphere enveloping him. Amidst the tension, a veteran detective named Takeshi Kuroiwa suddenly intervened and demanded his subordinate stop the rough behavior at once. Arai immediately let go and saluted his superior according to protocol, leaving Yuto and Chika still in shock after the harsh accusations. Detective Kuroiwa approached, gently comforting the two of them that they had been through a lot, and that he was truly glad both were safe and sound. He introduced himself as the person directly in charge of the Exeedra task force, trying to use his gentleness to soothe the fear clearly showing on Chika's face. However, Arai still didn't stop scrutinizing, resting his chin on his hand and concluding that Yuto single-handedly defeating 3 attackers was a highly suspicious matter, leaving the two young friends dead silent in astonishment, silently realizing that the police were starting to shift their suspicion toward the victims themselves. Showing no mercy, the young detective stepped forward to corner Chika and bluntly questioned whether she had made some secret pact with the criminal organization. Chika gasped in shock, exclaiming that she would never do such a terrible thing, her face clearly showing pain at the malicious accusations. Yuto immediately stepped up, spreading his arms to shield Chika, and angrily demanded Detective Arai stop prying into other people's personal lives at once. The young detective smirked with a deeply implied smile, declaring that today's interrogation ended here but warning them to mentally prepare to cooperate. Watching the silhouettes of the law enforcers walk away, Yuto still couldn't hide his wariness even though Chika stood in silence with a heavy heart. Meanwhile, The news broadcast began reporting on a new drug spreading rapidly through every corner of Shibuya. This special drug named Exeedra was blamed as the cause of a series of horrific violent incidents, turning the streets into battlefields. At the orphanage, Chika suddenly noticed a little girl about to turn off the TV broadcasting that shocking news. She hastily stopped her and asked to leave the TV on, her eyes glued to the screen as if wanting to search for some kind of truth. Despite the child's worry, Chika sighed softly and assured her that everything was fine even though violent waves were churning in her heart. The TV screen continued to report that the police were investigating the connections of the Exeedra organization, while urging citizens to limit going out. The aggressive mob screamed endlessly, holding up banners demanding punishment for the Exeedra organization and directing their hatred straight at the innocent girl. Yuto gently comforted Chika that she should quickly forget those harsh words because she had absolutely nothing to do with the crimes they were mentioning. However, the silhouettes of the Exeedra assassins alongside their declaration that they came by the order of Lord Tizen still haunted her mind like a ghost. Chika went silent with sorrowful eyes, secretly feeling guilty about the sinful blood running through her veins without knowing how to face it. Noticing her gloominess, the children in the orphanage hastily ran over to comfort her, and asserted that they only liked to see a Chika who was always smiling radiantly. Hiroto alongside the other children surrounded her with warmth, dispelling the suffocating atmosphere and the anxieties weighing heavily on the young girl's shoulders. They solemnly declared that no matter what happened, everyone was still family, and they themselves would be the ones to stand up and protect her when necessary. Before that sincere affection, Chika could only choke back her tears to express her gratitude while happy tears began to roll down her cheeks. She hugged the children tightly to her chest, letting her long-suppressed pain be released through an affectionate embrace full of love. Yuto smiled with satisfaction at that warm scene, then gently reminded the whole group that it was late and everyone should go to sleep to prepare for tomorrow. The two children in the orphanage exchanged a highly mischievous look as if hatching a fun plan to tease their older brother. They loudly teased Yuto that he was jealous because the kids had just received a warm hug from Chika, making him blush furiously and yell out a denial of that truth. As night fell, under the bright full moon, Yuto breathed a soft sigh of relief when he finally managed to coax the hyperactive kids to sleep to have a quiet moment with Chika. The atmosphere suddenly became somber as Chika looked at him with melancholy eyes, hesitantly speaking up to say there was an incredibly important matter they needed to discuss. Realizing the seriousness in the girl's attitude, Yuto frowned slightly in deep concern and asked what on earth was making her mind so troubled. Chika got straight to the point by asking if he clearly remembered the entire progression of the battle with those strangers earlier, but Yuto could only shake his head vaguely. He explained that ever since the moment he was struck in the head by that long-haired assassin's devastating kick, all memories in his mind suddenly became blank and fragmented. Yuto's answer made Chika painfully assert that she knew this would happen beforehand, while he was completely bewildered by her strange expression. The young girl bowed her head in deep guilt, tormenting herself that his becoming so out of control was entirely caused by her own fault. Chika suddenly brought up the memory of the time he received a blood transfusion from her in the past, making Yuto gasp in shock, wondering what horrific secret was hidden behind that event. Yuto was astounded as he recalled receiving a blood transfusion from Chika, a truth he had always considered up until now to be his sole stroke of luck. The image of him lying motionless on the hospital bed with an oxygen mask flashed back, evoking the fragile boundary between life and death. Back then, Chika had stood silently by his side, watching his recovery process with eyes holding thousands of agonizing thoughts. The young girl painfully recalled that he had risked his life to protect her when attacked, and ultimately, people used her very own blood to save his life. Yuto, stunned, posed the question of whether the abnormal changes in his body right now were truly due to that blood starting to take effect. Although unable to provide concrete proof, Chika still tremblingly recounted the words her father once told his accomplices during the school terrorist attack years ago. The head of the dark organization, with eyes burning with blind faith, had asserted a horrifying truth about the future of humanity. He claimed that through Chika's blood, the entire world would awaken and enter a new, cruel stage of evolution. Yuto repeated those words in absolute terror, silently realizing that Chika had been living in profound fear all this time because of this dark secret. She painfully confessed that she was always haunted by the thought that her blood was the very ingredient used to create that deadly drug, the thing that had sown so many tragedies for humanity. Yuto exclaimed in astonishment as he began to realize the horrific scale of the secret gradually being unveiled right before his eyes. Behind the door, the director stood silently in the dark, watching the two of them with a gloomy and mysterious gaze. Thoughts about how that deadly drug could be extracted from the young girl's very own blood kept tormenting his mind continuously. The pensive face of the bespectacled man exuded a serious demeanor, as if he was bearing an incredibly heavy psychological pressure. Yuto suddenly froze. The feeling of being watched made him instantly vigilant, and he whipped his head toward the entrance. He stared intently into the silent void behind the door, silently wondering if someone had just been lurking in the shadows of the hallway. But then he breathed a soft sigh, telling himself that perhaps it was all just his overactive imagination brought on by stress. Returning to the dining table, Yuto asked Chika in a stern voice if she was truly serious about her claims regarding that cursed blood. Chika bowed her head gloomily, firmly asserting that deep within her body lay hidden an incredibly dark source of energy. Standing opposite Chika, Yuto pondered deeply whether that blood truly possessed the power to turn humans into violent maniacs. Yuto pensively recalled the moment he lost control, admitting that at that time he was just like a beast fighting on pure instinct. He connected the events and realized with shock that the drug Megatron causing havoc in Shibuya could very likely be closely linked to Chika's blood. Yuto's hands clenched in rage, silently swearing that he would never let anyone have the chance to steal away that girl's peaceful life ever again. Yuto's sudden determination left Chika completely astonished, as she softly looked up at her best friend with eyes filled with confusion. With eyes glowing a golden hue, Yuto solemnly declared that he would crush every obstacle in the way so Chika could keep her radiant smile forever. In the silent space of the room, Chika could only quietly call his name, her heart tightening at the young man's overly fierce protection. To dispel the tense atmosphere, Chika mischievously asked if that was a confession, causing Yuto to blush furiously and flatly deny it, saying he was just over-worrying. She flashed a bright smile and softly apologized for teasing him, but deep down, both clearly understood each other's important place in their hearts. Looking toward the skyscrapers of Shibuya, Yuto silently planned tomorrow's trip to find clues about the origin of that deadly drug. His gaze turned sharp and cold as he assessed that the police would be of no help, and he himself had to be the one to directly step up and end this nightmare. Yuto pensively concluded that going alone was too dangerous, but he believed that if he followed the trail of that drug, he would find the secret behind the changes in his body. Chika immediately stepped forward and asserted she would go with him, despite Yuto stopping her and saying it was too risky because the people out there already remembered her face. With a resolute gaze full of determination, the young girl emphasized that this was also her own problem and earnestly begged him to let her accompany him to bear the burden. Yuto silently worried that if he left, those three monsters might take the opportunity to come back and attack her once again right at the orphanage. So he finally agreed, but with the strict condition that she must absolutely never leave his sight for even a single second. The next morning, the Shibuya sky appeared fully modern but also held hidden dangers lurking beneath the shadows of the towering skyscrapers. The two appeared on the streets with a new look, Chika wearing a hat and glasses to disguise herself, while Yuto quietly walked right beside her on protection duty. Seeing the girl worried that the disguise might make them stand out even more, Yuto blushed and yelled at her to be quiet because this was the only way to avoid being spotted by the enemy. Looking at Chika's back, Yuto silently thought she was still clumsy but had always been so straightforward since the days they were both children relying on each other. His pensiveness was broken when Chika suddenly gripped his arm tightly, causing the young man to gasp in surprise amidst the bustling crowd. Chika curiously pressed to know what Yuto's embarrassed expression meant, making him awkwardly turn away to hide the confusion surging in his heart. Yuto gently touched his lips, silently thinking that the peaceful atmosphere between the two of them right now was truly the most natural thing he had always longed for. Standing in the middle of a small alley in Shibuya, Yuto revealed to Chika that he was actually waiting to meet someone very special. Right at that moment, Takashiro Hayato appeared with a bright smile on his face, running over while waving to greet his close friend. The powerful clasp of hands between the two men acted as an affirmation of their strong friendship after years of separation, much to Chika's surprise. Chika was astounded to recognize the familiar face, exclaiming in shock upon realizing that Hayato was the one who had appeared in her past. Memories rushed back to the image of Hayato single-handedly defeating a gang of thugs to protect poor little Chika trembling on the ground years ago. Chika painfully recounted that right after her blood was transfused into Yuto, she was attacked once more by cruel people. Hearing this, Hayato's eyes suddenly widened in fury, his breathing rapid as he realized the enemy's cruelty had surpassed all limits. Meanwhile, Yuto's eyes began to glow with a dark crimson sinister aura, signaling a storm of power about to explode to protect what was right. Yuto, in a frenzy with eyes glowing with a sinister aura, suddenly lunged close to Hayato, preparing for a destructive attack. He unleashed a massive punch straight into his old friend's face, the powerful shockwave making the surrounding space seem to shatter, sending the opponent flying far away in absolute shock, displaying the brutal Chronos power completely taking over his body. Without giving his opponent a chance to breathe, Yuto lunged and pinned Hayato's chest to the ground, his consciousness now clouded by a killer instinct. He stood tall like a demon stepping out of hell, coldly looking down at the defeated foe with blank, burning eyes. Returning to reality in the deserted alley of Shibuya, the atmosphere suddenly turned heavy as old emotional wounds were reopened. Chika furiously screamed through tears, accusing that it was Hayato's very appearance that had caused Yuto to suffer a bitter imprisonment, leaving everyone around dead silent in shock, while the young girl's eyes widened from the torment of the past pain. Despite his pride, Hayato suddenly knelt prostrate on the street in a Dajiza posture, accepting the humiliation to apologize to his friend. He yelled out a belated apology for past mistakes, silently begging for a chance to make up for the pain he had caused. Yuto hastily stepped forward to help Hayato up and demanded his friend stop this exaggerated act of apology at once, even though a trace of doubt still lingered in his heart. He explained to Chika that Hayato was originally just brainwashed with lies by the bad people around him, leading to his mistaken actions years ago. Though Hayato was still kneeling on the ground full of remorse, Yuto firmly asserted that those lies could absolutely not become an excuse for what had happened. Yuto recounted that as soon as he realized he had misunderstood Chika, Hayato spared no effort traveling the long distance all the way to the rehabilitation center to apologize to him. The image of the two friends sitting opposite each other in the visitation room returned, marking a major turning point as they began to open up and resolve all animosity. Looking straight into Chika's eyes, Yuto smiled gently and asserted that he himself had long chosen to forgive all of Hayato's mistakes. Chika listened in silence, her eyes wavering slightly as she realized the deep friendship and noble tolerance that Yuto had for his old friend. Hayato once again bowed his head very low, sincerely offering a belated apology to Chika for the pain he had indirectly caused her. He hesitantly revealed that he had actually wanted to apologize to her a long time ago, but back then, it was Yuto who had spoken up to stop him. Yuto seriously explained that the reason he did so was because he noticed Chika was not ready at that time, and she truly needed more time to heal her emotional wounds. Chika curiously pressed to know the meaning behind the sudden shyness on Yuto's face, leaving him flustered and not knowing how to respond. The young girl sighed softly, agreeing that if Yuto felt everything was fine, she would also choose to keep her silence to herself. Yuto gritted his teeth and swore he would crush any obstacle in the way so that Chika could smile radiantly as she was meant to. Right at that moment, Takashiro Hayato appeared with a cheerful smile, enthusiastically greeting his old friend standing and waiting for him from afar. The reunion took place in the small alley as Hayato remarked that it had been far too long since they last had a chance to meet like this. But Chika suddenly widened her eyes in terror upon realizing that Hayato was the one who had appeared during the darkest time of her past. She painfully recalled the horrific memory of being attacked once again right after just undergoing the blood transfusion for Yuto. Standing at the Shibuya intersection, the three decided to join hands to investigate the whereabouts of those spreading that deadly drug. However, two strangers with sinister smiles suddenly blocked the path, casually declaring that their investigation journey would have to end right here. Yuto glared in shock as he sensed danger approaching, his cold stare signaling a fierce battle about to erupt. Standing in a secluded alley, Yuto, Chika, and Hayato were blocked by an aggressive gang of thugs, the leader speaking in a challenging tone and pointing straight at the three with utter contempt. The thug surrounded by a purple sinister aura growled, declaring that they would not be able to cross this line if they persisted in investigating the drug Megatra. Yuto instantly seized the opening, coldly questioning whether they were holding crucial information regarding the origin of that banned drug. The bespectacled guy smirked and made a condition that if they wanted the information, They had to hand over all the cash they were carrying immediately. He pushed his luck further and further, uttering a filthy threat that if there was no money, they would take the petite girl instead, leaving Chika shocked and trembling in fear. Rage erupted in Yuto's eyes, and he roared, demanding they stop playing cheap tricks with him for even a single second longer. Just as Yuto was about to act, Hayato timely stopped him and calmly requested his best friend step back so he could handle this crowd. Flashing a confident smile, Hayato asserted that this was exactly why Yuto had brought him along, then advised both of them to just stand there and watch his performance. The thugs were bewildered by the strange kid's arrogant attitude, mockingly asking if he truly wanted to risk his life to play with them. Hayato's composure made the leader furious, his eyes widening as he screamed frantically, asking what on earth he was laughing at in this dangerous situation. Hayato confidently declared that he himself had fought on the streets since he was a child, and those who were only good at running their mouths would surely meet a disastrous end, causing the angered thugs to rush forward to attack, roaring to ask what the hell he just said and warning him not to be too complacent in front of them. Facing the opponent's wide open swing, Hayato smirked slightly, silently assessing that such an untechnical strike was absolutely incapable of touching him, as he immediately ducked low, evading another wind-tearing punch by a hair's breadth. Seizing the opportunity, Hayato delivered a lightning-fast punch straight into the enemy's face, the massive power completely stripping the opponent of any ability to resist. The one hit only managed to gasp in shock before being sent flying far away, leaving the accomplice standing next to him dead silent in astonishment. Flashing a provocative smile, Hayato made an arrogant hand gesture, challenging the remaining ones to quickly come forward to end this game. Noticing his opponent's hesitation, he suddenly rushed forward like a whirlwind, roaring that if they didn't dare to step up, he would personally bring punishment upon them. He grabbed the collar and slammed the opponent straight into the brick wall, leaving the thug only able to groan in pain as if his entire skeleton was about to shatter. Hayato stood tall, looking down at the defeated foe lying limp on the ground, casually and sarcastically asking where his confidence from earlier had vanished to in the end. Seeing the bespectacled guy furiously pull out a knife to threaten him, Yuto and Chika couldn't help but worry about their companion's safety. But Hayato casually commented on that weapon, then began to list the 3 types of people that made him the most annoyed in the world. The thug screamed and lunged forward, intending to finish the young man off with a vicious stab to regain honor for his comrades. However, Hayato merely tilted his body slightly, dodging the razor-sharp blade by a hair's breadth with incredibly flexible footwork. He threw a devastating direct punch right into the opponent's face, coldly declaring that the first type of person he hated were cowards who specialized in using dirty tricks. Witnessing their comrade fall, the rest roared in indignation and decided to use sheer numbers to crush his arrogance. Standing before the encirclement of the rushing crowd, Hayato maintained a calm expression, silently mocking the clumsiness in their coordination. 2 large guys closed in from both sides at the same time, firmly believing that their overwhelming numbers would leave him with absolutely no chance to escape. However, with terrifying speed, he slipped through the narrow gap between the 2 attackers, leaving them only enough time to see a blur flash behind their backs. Hayato's eyes turned sharp and cold as he explained that gathering in such large numbers created fatal blind spots that helped him easily master the game. The thug clutched his face that was contorting in pain, his glazed eyes filled with terror at Hayato's lightning-fast striking speed. Hayato smirked in contempt as he easily swatted the next attacker aside, silently concluding that these trivial street fights only required a thunderous punch aimed straight at the weak point to completely shatter all of the opponent's defenses in the blink of an eye. Because the core thing that always helped him win was the ability to read the enemy's intentions and always seize the upper hand before they could even act. The lackeys lay limply on the ground, tremblingly uttering in despair that this young man was truly an unstoppable maniac. The 2 remaining accomplices widened their eyes in horror, hastily rallying each other to coordinate more smoothly if they didn't want to meet a tragic end. Chika stood watching from afar with wide eyes full of worry, her heart tightening as she witnessed the fierceness of the battle unfolding right before her eyes. Realizing they couldn't face him head-on, the cowards instantly changed their target, screaming and ordering each other to quickly grab the girl to use as a hostage. Yuto immediately stepped forward, spreading his arms to shield Chika, gritting his teeth and demanding she step far back so he could use all his might to punish those bastards. With a burning sinister aura in his eyes, Yuto delivered a massive punch straight into the thug's chest, officially ending their arrogance with overwhelming power. Yuto stood tall in the middle of the alley, silently looking at the defeated foe kneeling on the ground in shock and humiliation. He glared with a murderous aura, solemnly swearing that he would not allow anyone to touch a single hair on Chika's head. Meanwhile, the remaining thugs could only tremble and gasp in terror upon realizing that the petite girl standing next to Hayato also possessed power that was far from ordinary. A cowardly thug hastily clasped his hands sincerely, beginning to beg for forgiveness in hopes of finding a way to live. He loudly declared total surrender, hoping to escape the raging fury welling up in Yuto's eyes. Suddenly, a maniacal guy pulled out a knife and lunged from a hidden corner, roaring a threat to end his life right then and there. But Hayato managed to deliver a thunderous kick straight into the opponent's face just in time, stopping the despicable sneak attack in the blink of an eye. The perpetrator gasped in utter astonishment upon realizing Hayato's silhouette had closed in right behind him like a ghost. Yuto groaned softly as a grazing slash on his arm began to bleed, gritting his teeth to suppress the pain even though his face had gone pale from the wound. Chika screamed Yuto's name in panic, hastily rushing toward her best friend with eyes filled with endless worry and regret. Hayato coldly declared that the type of people he could never forgive in this world were liars. His eyes burned with indignation as he channeled all his fury into an ironclad assertion aimed straight at the person opposite him. Instantly, a powerful punch was thrown straight into the opponent's face, creating a strong shockwave that completely shattered the enemy. Witnessing that overwhelming power, the thugs panicked and scattered in all directions, constantly screaming that the two of them were truly monsters. Not giving anyone a chance to escape, Yuto silently closed in on the third target with terrifying speed in the blink of an eye. The thug wearing sunglasses only had time to widen his eyes in terror upon realizing the ghost of death had already closed in right behind him. Yuto unleashed a brutal finishing blow along with a contemptuous sarcastic remark aimed at the cowardly men who always looked for ways to run away from a fight. Hayato flashed a triumphant smile and cheered in excitement upon realizing all the cards had fallen perfectly into their group's calculations. In the middle of a small alley in Shibuya, the entire gang of thugs now had to kneel prostrate at the group of friends' feet in utter humiliation and terror. Yuto coldly interrogated them about the whereabouts of the Megatron drug, even as the thug kept trembling and begging that they truly knew nothing at all. Yuto grabbed the thug tightly by the collar, furiously demanding he confess the whole truth, making the guy only able to tremblingly blurt out the name Zeno, who was controlling all the underground activities from behind the scenes. Hearing that, Yuto was stunned for a moment. He repeated that strange name with a face full of skepticism and worry. The accomplice kneeling on the ground hastily added that they had never met this Zeno guy in person, but he was definitely the sole boss holding the Megatron supply across all of Shibuya. Horrifying rumors about Zeno began to surface. The image of a lone butcher annihilating dozens of those who dared to challenge him appeared hauntingly amidst the silent space, leaving the entire group of Yuto, Chika, and Hayato astounded, clearly sensing a dangerous phantom gradually looming over their journey to find the truth. The thug swallowed hard, tremblingly recounting Zeno's ambitious declaration about a volatile future soon to befall all the city's residents. The image of the villain with a wicked smile appeared in their minds, carrying the cold threat that very soon, everything in this place would completely change. Yuto repeated that sentence in shock with an extremely tense expression, silently wondering what kind of horrific scheme that madman was ultimately plotting. The dark shadow of the masked man appeared like an omen of death. His invisible presence radiated a suffocating pressure weighing heavily on the young man's shoulders. Yuto clenched his fists, his eyes clearly showing determination mixed with anxiety, as he repeated the warning that the entire city of Shibuya was about to face a bloody purge. Yuto pressed to ask if they knew anything else, receiving only a trembling confession from the leader that that was all they knew. Hayato turned and asked what the next step would be, seeing that these cowards truly had no further value to exploit. Yuto quietly ordered to let them go, making the thugs breathe a sigh of relief as if they had just returned from the dead. He shouted loudly, demanding they get lost immediately, causing the whole group to panic and flee for their lives out of the alley while apologizing profusely. Looking at the enemy's retreating backs, Hayato doubted whether that Zeno guy was actually a member of the Exeedra organization and received a confirming nod from Yuto. Yuto narrowed his eyes with absolute resolve, silently thinking that at least now they had a crucial clue and needed to annihilate them as soon as possible. The atmosphere suddenly became silent as the young man sank deep into his calculations for the upcoming purge. Suddenly, Chika rushed over with a face full of anxiety. She loudly asked about the wound on his arm and received reassurance that it was nothing to worry about. But the young girl couldn't help but scold him grumpily for breaking his promise by exhausting himself once again, then frantically demanded to take him for treatment right away. Facing Chika's worry, Hayato suggested the group head back to the nearby shop for first aid, even though Yuto stubbornly insisted he was fine and wanted to focus on more important matters. Chika screamed, demanding Yuto stop at once because she didn't want him to continue risking his life any further surrounded by enemies. Witnessing his best friend's submission to the petite girl, Hayato didn't miss the chance to tease that Yuto had indeed been completely subdued by her. Leaving behind the petty bickering, the Shibuya sky appeared entirely modern but also concealed the dark hues of the chaos about to ensue. The group of three quietly walked past the bustling high-rises, every step carrying high caution and vigilance. In the dark hidden corners, addicts with gaunt faces and lifeless eyes were gradually losing their humanity due to the effects of the drug. The horrific scene of a madman fiercely lunging to attack his own kind like a wild beast appeared hauntingly right in the middle of the city. Hayato pensively concluded that these sudden violent incidents were definitely due to the impact of the Megatron drug spreading increasingly across the city. Facing that chaotic reality, Chika asked in bewilderment why the police force still hadn't taken any intervention to protect the citizens. Hayato disappointedly explained that because Megatra's ingredients slipped through legal loopholes, even the police were completely powerless in handling it. With a resolute and decisive gaze hidden behind her glasses, Chika silently affirmed that they had to act very fast to annihilate the Exeedra organization before things went too far. Under the clear blue sky of Shibuya, towering skyscrapers appeared, signaling the group's highly promising next stop. Hayato cheerfully led Yuto and Chika to the front of a traditional restaurant, then invited the two to feel free to go inside since it wasn't yet time to welcome guests. Yuto couldn't help but be astounded to learn that his best friend was a manager at a place like this, leading Hayato to smugly affirm his position with a radiant smile. The sliding door was suddenly pushed aside, the dry sound ringing out to break the silent atmosphere inside the restaurant. Hayato walked into the main hall and loudly called Yuki's name, but he suddenly froze when he saw the tables and chairs still neatly arranged with no one around. The young man's face clearly showed confusion. He silently wondered where on earth his mischievous younger sister had run off to at a time like this. He began to scold grumpily because he had carefully entrusted her with looking after the shop, yet she dared to leave her post without permission. But immediately, Takagi Yuki, Hayato's hot 18-year-old sister, appeared with an excited cheer upon seeing Yuto from afar. Without a bit of hesitation, she rushed over to hug the young man tightly, leaving Yuto completely frozen in utter shock and embarrassment. Witnessing that overly intimate greeting, Hayato could only scream his sister's name to stop the bold, spontaneous act unfolding right before his eyes. Yuki flashed a radiant smile welcoming Yuto after a long time apart. She expressed immense surprise upon seeing that he had actually come to visit her brother's shop. Yuto softly remarked that she was still as full of energy as always, while Chika, standing behind, could only stay silent at the newly met girl's excessively revealing outfit. Hayato spoke up to reprimand his sister for bringing her entire work outfit back to the shop, leaving Chika curious upon hearing the mention of Yuki's mysterious job. Yuki suddenly stepped closer, using her sharp, dominant purple eyes to observe Chika from head to toe as if scrutinizing a potential rival. She bluntly uttered a sarcastic remark that she still recognized Chika by her submissive and weak appearance that hadn't changed over the years. With a mysterious smile, Yuki introduced herself as currently working at an adult club specializing in punishing terrible men with bad intentions. She suddenly hugged Yuto's arm tightly and solemnly declared in front of everyone that she was his official fiancée. Yuto was stunned in amazement at the baseless assertion by his best friend's sister, his face clearly showing shock at this awkward situation. Suddenly Yuki saw the bloodstain on his arm and shrieked in anxiety, even though Yuto kept trying to wave his hand and say the wound was really nothing to worry about. Not giving him a chance to resist, she decisively dragged Yuto inside for first aid, ignoring the astonishment of Chika and Hayato standing silently in the middle of the shop. Yuki flashed a highly confident smile and promised Yuto that she would help him feel more comfortable after those exhausting battles. Yuto shuddered slightly as he sat down on the chair. He felt a bit pressured by the young girl's excessive enthusiasm and possessiveness. Yuki turned and ordered her brother to quickly go get the first aid kit, making Hayato panic and obey without daring to talk back a single word. Witnessing that scene, Yuto silently mocked that even a tough guy like Hayato was subdued by his little sister. But the guy just grumbled and justified that he was doing it all for his friend. Urged on by his grumpy sister, Hayato hastily ran off while Yuto silently marveled at his best friend's weakness before this girl full of personality. A specialized medical kit was quickly laid out on the table with plenty of bandages and antiseptics necessary for treating the wound. Yuki meticulously wrapped the bandage around Yuto's wound with high concentration, her eyes clearly showing pity for the man she considered her fiancé. She casually shared that she was too used to giving first aid to others, making Yuto shudder in fear when thinking about the violent nature of her job. Yuki's gaze suddenly turned sharp and furious as she declared she would never let off anyone who dared to touch a single hair on Yuto's head. She glared at Chika with deep animosity, and coldly uttered an accusation that it was precisely because of a certain someone's presence that Yuto had to fall into this mess. Chika anxiously asked if Yuki had a grudge against her, forcing Hayato to embarrassingly explain that his younger sister had always viewed her as a formidable love rival. Hearing that, Chika blushed furiously and frantically denied it, stammering her assertion that the relationship between her and Yuto was absolutely nothing like that. To clear the awkward atmosphere, Yuto got straight to the point, asking Yuki in a serious tone if she knew anything about a guy named Zeno. Yuki's face suddenly turned grave as she revealed she had heard customers gossiping that Zeno was the mastermind behind the drug known as Megatra. Yuto immediately pressed for his whereabouts, but Yuki could only shake her head because even the most well-informed individuals had no idea where he was. However, she unexpectedly mentioned a bar called Death Valley, which was rumored to be a secret transaction spot for criminals. With eyes burning with determination, Yuto demanded Yuki lead them there immediately, firmly believing this Zeno guy was connected to Exeedra. Yuki was briefly stunned to hear the name of her former organization, admitting she had also heard rumors that they had officially returned. The feisty girl suddenly stepped close to Chika with a provocative attitude, instantly plunging the restaurant's atmosphere into extreme tension. Yuki smirked, asserting she was willing to act if it was for Yuto, but absolutely not for the sake of protecting someone like Chika. Yuki closed in on Chika with a sharp gaze as if trying to see right through her soul, creating a heavy, high-pressure atmosphere right inside the diner. She decisively ordered Chika to stay behind, leaving the young girl completely shocked and trembling as she asked why she was being excluded. Yuki growled, questioning whether Chika intended to selfishly drag Yuto into another whirlwind of trouble yet again. She bluntly insulted Chika as a walking disaster, and declared she would never bring a useless person along to burden the team. Faced with the venomous insults that struck right at her past trauma, Chika could only lower her head in silence, her face dark with sorrow and a deep sense of inferiority. Yuki's wrath didn't stop there as she loudly asserted that Chika herself was the root cause of all the misfortunes crashing down on Yuto. She stood tall and proud, declaring that even if Yuto personally begged her, she would absolutely never carry a weakling who didn't know how to protect herself. Seeing the situation grow too intense, Yuto hurriedly stepped forward to intervene and stop Yuki, trying to protect Chika's wounded pride. Even Hayato had to command his sister to stop in a stern voice, but Yuki stubbornly flipped her chin, asserting she was merely stating the harsh truth. Despite Yuto's attempts to deny it, Chika painfully spoke up to admit that every cruel thing Yuki had just uttered was completely accurate. Chika tightly grabbed Yuki's shoulders, firmly asserting that she also had her own reasons for not backing down on this perilous journey. But Yuki immediately brushed her hands off ruthlessly, coldly declaring that she didn't even want to waste time listening to any explanations. The feisty girl relentlessly scolded Chika not to use selfish words to heap even more pressure onto Yuto's shoulders. Seeing that things were going too far, Yuto hurriedly asked Yuki to calm down and listen, because that reason might actually be incredibly important to her. Standing before Yuki's overwhelming presence, Chika still resiliently held her ground, asserting that she must throw herself into the battle at all costs. Yuki gritted her teeth, about to hurl insults at those selfish reasons, but Chika's determined step forward caused her to freeze in her tracks. In a breathtaking moment, Chika leaned close to her rival's ear and revealed that her very existence was the most valuable bait that the Exeedra organization craved. Yuki was completely dumbfounded by the burning fire of determination in the eyes of the girl she had always despised, secretly wondering what on earth had caused this change. The stubborn girl crossly folded her arms and turned away with an annoyed look, realizing she no longer had any arguments left to stop her opponent. Despite agreeing, Yuki still delivered a final warning that if anything went wrong, Chika shouldn't expect any pity from her. Yuki smirked with satisfaction at Chika's determination, agreeing to lead the group directly to the secret location they were searching for. The destination appeared as a bar named Death Valley, where Yuto couldn't help but be stunned by its gloomy atmosphere, vastly different from the bustle of Shibuya. Before entering, Yuki sternly warned everyone not to do anything foolish, as she had to use her underworld connections just to pave the way. The door opened, and the friends stepped into a lively yet danger-filled space, met with scrutinizing glares from the unfamiliar crowd. Yuto narrowed his eyes to observe the surroundings, inwardly feeling a suffocating pressure, as he realized he was standing right in a den of thugs. Fierce-looking men silently cast sidelong glances at the newcomers, making the suspicion that they belonged to Exeedra even more glaringly obvious. Hayato shuddered slightly, noting that the people here possessed a thick, deadly aura that was many times more dangerous than anyone they had faced before. Amidst the tense atmosphere, a female bartender with a mysterious smile nonchalantly wiped a glass, as if completely accustomed to guests radiating bloodlust. All of a sudden, Chika rushed straight toward the bar counter to the astonishment of her teammates, ignoring Yuto's panicked shout from behind. Standing before the unfamiliar female bartender, Chika bravely declared that she had come here to find the whereabouts of the deadly drug Megatron. The female bartender was briefly taken aback, her eyes widening in surprise at Chika's reckless outburst right at the bar. The entire scene of the Death Valley bar loomed gloomily, a place where thugs gathered and silently watched the newly arrived group of guests. Yuto suddenly detected something unusual, noticing a few dark figures stealthily slipping out through the back door, making him secretly wary of a trap. Stepping closer, the female bartender offered a cold piece of advice, telling Chika she should leave this place immediately before it was too late. Despite the threat, Chika steadfastly pressed, asking if anyone among this crowd knew the whereabouts of the man named Zeno. Her question caused the atmosphere in the bar to instantly turn terrifyingly silent, as all the fierce men turned at once to scrutinize them. Within the suffocating space, heavy and rapid footsteps echoed across the wooden floor, signaling the presence of a true predator. Hayato froze in shock as he noticed the shadow of the hidden man approaching, radiating a heavy pressure that weighed down on everyone's shoulders. Yuto narrowed his eyes with determination, inwardly asserting that the opponent before them was the very obstacle they had to overcome to find the truth. Zeno's cold face was officially revealed under the dim lighting, solidifying his status as the boss behind the entire Megatron drug ring in Shibuya. Standing tall amidst the gloomy space, the massive man silently observed the strange group of guests with a provocative look. Yuto didn't flinch. He stepped closer and demanded to know if he was the one directly distributing Megatron. The direct question caused the atmosphere in the bar to instantly freeze as the surrounding crowd began to show hostility. The crime boss merely smirked, hurling a challenge that if that were indeed the truth, what did the young man plan to do about it? All of a sudden, a strange tattoo of a DNA double helix slowly became visible on the criminal's rugged bicep. Chika cried out in horror as she realized that deadly symbol was right before her eyes. Fragments of memories regarding the shocking news report about the Exeedra organization's involvement suddenly rushed back into the young girl's mind. That mystical DNA symbol was the signature mark of the dark force that was spreading calamity across the entire city. Seeing his opponent's stunned expression, the crime boss looked smug and asked Yuto what on earth had made him lose his composure like that. He looked straight into Yuto's eyes with a sinister smile, then coldly asked if his purpose for coming here wasn't to buy Megatron after all. Yuto's eyes glowed with the gold of Chronos' power as he looked directly at the enemy with unshakable resolve. Zeno lost his patience and demanded he quickly end this nonsense talk so they could proceed with the transaction. But Yuto suddenly flashed a provocative smile, proudly declaring that they were here to overthrow the entire Exeedra organization. Zeno burst into mock laughter, looking at the young man with contemptuous eyes and asking if he was actually serious with those words. Without another word, he silently waved his hand, signaling his subordinates to launch an all-out attack immediately. A fierce thug clenched his fists, loudly asking his comrades if they heard the arrogant declaration of war from these kids. The knife-wielding assassin gritted his teeth and threatened that Yuto's group truly had a death wish to dare step into their den. In the blink of an eye, the aggressive crowd tightly surrounded the four of them, creating an incredibly dangerous and suffocating formation. Hayato seemed extremely thrilled, smirking as he inwardly mused that getting straight to the point was exactly his favorite style. Yuki also proudly drew her leather whip, mockingly remarking that this room was filled with men begging to be taught a costly lesson by her. The friends stood back to back inside the circle of assassins, ready for a ruthless bloodbath right in the middle of the bar. Zeno smirked triumphantly at Yuto's tension, inwardly despising those who dared to challenge his authority in Shibuya. Yuki nonchalantly flashed an excited smile, asserting that these people looked like they would be very fun to torture. The perimeter began to tighten around the four youths, turning the surrounding space into a deadly trap with no escape. Zeno's henchmen showed clear signs of anxiety at their opponent's calm demeanor, as they began to feel the rising Chronos' spiritual energy. The female bartender silently observed the entire development from behind the counter, her eyes filled with curiosity about the battle's outcome. Without the slightest hesitation, Zeno waved his hand, ordering all his subordinates to immediately eliminate the pests blocking their path to crush the rebellion. Right after the command, the aggressive thugs charged forward simultaneously to attack, creating a violent whirlwind of brutality aimed at Yuto's group. An assassin suddenly swung his knife, slashing through the air, but Yuto quickly slipped aside to dodge with razor-sharp reflexes. The young man immediately reached out to grab the opponent's wrist, locking down the treacherous attack to neutralize the enemy's weapon in a split second. With his eyes glowing gold, Yuto channeled all his strength into a powerful punch, unleashing a burst of Chronos' spiritual energy that made the surrounding space seem to tremble. At the same time, Hayato delivered a highly technical spin kick that knocked an assassin aside, demonstrating seamless coordination between comrades. He roared in pure excitement, channeling all his fury into the next punch to crush any resisting efforts from the surrounding thugs. Watching from the bar counter, the boss Zeno smirked contemptuously at the weapon in Yuki's hand, calling it nothing but a cheap, harmless toy. Yuki flashed a mesmerizing smile and challenged him to wait and see how she would use this toy to put on a bloody performance. Without giving her opponent time to recover, she swung the leather whip at a wind-splitting speed, creating a deadly arc that struck straight into the target. The brutal strike made the criminal scream in agony as his face shattered, while Yuki merely nonchalantly let out a mocking compliment about his pathetic cry. The melee exploded violently throughout the bar space, as Yuto, Hayato, and Yuki all fought with everything they had to sweep away the lackeys rushing forward to their deaths. However, Yuto suddenly paused with a doubtful gaze, inwardly concluding that something was incredibly unusual about these people's actual strength. Looking back at the image of elite assassins like Shade or the red-haired guy, the young man realized in shock that the thugs here were completely not on the same level as the true Exeedra organization. Zeno looked at the group of friends with contempt, mocking that they were no different from street thugs even if they had a bit more skill than he thought. The boss cracked his neck in challenge, coldly declaring that he would take the trouble to clear out this nuisance and personally step in to punish them. Zeno stood tall like a mountain of meat, arrogantly spreading his arms and signaling Yuto's group to attack quickly. Facing the suffocating pressure from the opponent, both Yuto and Hayato gritted their teeth warily while Yuki still tried to maintain her composure in the face of overwhelming power. Without hesitation, Hayato rushed forward like an arrow and launched a direct punch at Zeno's stomach, but the boss stood still like an unyielding boulder. With an indifferent expression, Zeno teasingly asked what his opponent was trying to pull before suddenly throwing a heavy punch that knocked Hayato backward. The lightning-fast strike sent Hayato flying away, while Yuki panicked and screamed her brother's name amidst the atmosphere slowly falling into chaos. The violent hurricane from Zeno's next swing created a terrifying pressure, ready to crush anyone standing in his way. The horrific destructive power shattered the surrounding tables and chairs into pieces, sending thick dust into the air and obscuring the group's vision. Amidst the rubble, Chika clutched her head and screamed in terror, while Yuto could only yell her name with extreme anxiety about an impending tragedy. The female bartender unexpectedly appeared to shield Chika, using a metal tray to block the collapsing debris. Witnessing that astonishing speed, Yuto was stunned, wondering if a normal service worker could possess such terrifying skills. In a moment of distraction, the boss Zeno suddenly closed in behind Yuto, uttering an eerie threat demanding the young man focus his eyes on him. Zeno smirked, sarcastically asking where his earlier confidence in overthrowing the Exeedra organization had gone. In response to the provocation, Yuto gritted his teeth and channeled all his strength into a direct, lightning-fast punch to crush his opponent's arrogance. However, his massive punch seemed useless against Zeno's iron-like body, making Yuto horrifyingly realize the gap in their true strength. Not missing the opportunity, the giant launched a devastating counterattack at Yuto's face along with a firm assertion that mediocre strikes would never work. Yuto was knocked far away into the dust, leaving Yuki and her teammates to scream in sheer worry for his safety. Zeno stood tall with absolute authority, mockingly asking if this was all the young group of heroes could do. In a dire situation, Hayato quietly whispered in Yuto's ear about a secret comeback plan, receiving a resolute nod from his best friend in return. Hayato shouted provocatively, ordering the whole group to start by immediately roasting the fat guy standing in front of them. The mockery turned Zeno's face purple with rage, as he growled, asking if the brats knew how massive of an insult the word fat truly was. Hayato was completely unafraid and even added another psychological blow by asserting that the guy's appearance was exactly what he had just described. With his fury reaching its peak, the giant screamed in denial and charged forward with a massive punch to crush the arrogant fool. Zeno aggressively called them skinny little mice, putting all his weight into a wide-area attack to completely seal off any escape routes. His face distorted with madness, he yelled out in resentment, seeing his opponents constantly weaving and dodging his lethal strikes. Right when he exposed a flaw, Hayato suddenly shouted Yuki's name as a signal for the comeback they had prepared in advance. Yuki appeared with an eerie smile, proudly declaring that she would use this leather whip to burn away the criminal's excess fat. Despite Zeno screaming to assert that he was a muscular beast, Yuki's whip quickly wrapped tightly around his tattooed bicep. With a decisive motion, her finger pressed hard on the activation button on the whip's handle to deliver a lightning-fast punishment upon the drug lord. Zeno was scorched by the electric current from Yuki's whip, only having enough time to scream in agony as the lightning engulfed his entire massive body. Yuki flashed a mischievous smile, teasing her opponent's extra fat, while Hayato hurriedly shouted, urging Yuto to quickly deliver the decisive blow. Seizing the opportunity, Yuto launched a direct, lightning-fast kick at the enemy's ribs, coldly asserting that no matter how strong the guy was, it was useless before him. The young man channeled all his fury into a mountain-shattering punch aimed straight at the criminal's face, roaring and demanding he stop selling drugs and live a life he could be proud of. The terrifying power knocked the giant flying, leaving Zeno to scream miserably as his body slammed hard against the solid ground amidst the dust. The battle temporarily ended as the panicked lackeys fled, leaving Yuto standing tall amidst the ruins with the authoritative gaze of a victor. He stepped forward and stepped on the defeated man lying limply, coldly ordering him to reveal the location of the Exeedra organization's hideout immediately. In utter terror, the criminal trembled and begged, claiming he truly knew nothing, which made Yuto grit his teeth in sheer anger at such stubbornness. Suddenly, Chika yelled in a panic to stop Yuto because she was shocked to realize the man before them was absolutely not the real Zeno. All eyes turned toward the bar counter as Chika pointed her finger, asserting that the mysterious female bartender was the true mastermind behind the powerful name Zeno. Yuto was stunned, pressing for the meaning behind Chika's shocking assertion aimed straight at the mysterious female bartender, prompting the young girl to tremblingly explain that she had recognized an old acquaintance from shattered childhood memories that were surfacing. In response to that astonishment, the female bartender smirked slightly, dropping an eerie greeting saying it had been a long time since she saw Lady Chika. The shocking confirmation completely froze Yuto, his glowing golden eyes widening at an unbelievable reality. The face of the real Zeno suddenly broke into a radiant yet highly dangerous smile, officially shedding the mask of a normal server. Yuto was secretly terrified, realizing this woman with an elegant appearance was actually the ruthless boss manipulating all of Shibuya Noir. Standing behind the villain now was an elite team of bodyguards in black suits, radiating a suffocating pressure that engulfed the space. Hayato gritted his teeth, concluding that this time the opponent was truly on a completely different level and far more terrifying than anyone before. Yuto quietly turned back to look at the motionless giant, secretly realizing that everything that just happened was nothing but a deceptive play. Amidst the ruins, the image of the fake Zeno lying pitifully became a testament to the ultimate maliciousness of the true criminal organization. Zeno smirked and explained that the giant just now was merely a stand-in because she inherently disliked drawing too much attention to herself. Then she quietly turned to look at Chika with great amusement, curiously pressing to know how such a small girl could see through her true identity so quickly. Faced with such an overwhelming presence, Chika slightly raised her hand to point at her opponent, her eyes behind the glasses clearly trembling as she brought up the piece of jewelry currently in plain sight. She choked up, asking Zeno if that necklace was the exact same item as the one belonging to her late mother that she always kept in her memories. Zeno half closed her eyes with a mysterious smile, softly praising that she didn't expect Chika to still retain memories of it after so many long years. With a stunned face, Chika tried to suppress her pain to confirm the past relationship, asking if Zeno was indeed her mother's closest friend from years ago. That shocking revelation made Yuto, Hayato, and Yuki all widen their eyes in astonishment, completely unable to believe that the enemy right in front of them had such a profound connection to Chika's family. Brushing aside those matters of the past, Zeno coldly reminded them that the Exeedra organization was relentlessly hunting Chika, and it was truly laughable that she willingly walked right into the lion's den like this. Immediately, Yuto spread his arms to shield Chika behind his back, loudly questioning what their true objective was and whether this was related to the Megatron drug ravaging the city. The only response to that anger was Zeno's piercing gaze and her proud declaration that the organization's noble purpose was something that ordinary people like him would never be able to comprehend. Yuto growled as he questioned Zeno, asserting he well knew she was plotting to use Chika for the organization's dark schemes. The female boss smirked mysteriously, nonchalantly denying it and declaring that their true goal was to liberate the young girl. The contradictory words left both Yuto and Chika stunned, as they bewilderedly wondered what on earth the meaning of the word liberate actually was. Zeno held up the brightly glowing necklace, loudly ordering Chika to liberate the special bloodline she had inherited from her mother named Maya. She passionately spoke of Maya as a genius capable of changing the whole world, yet possessing a heart so soft that she was overly weak. Chika was stunned into silence upon hearing her mother mentioned, shockingly questioning whether her father's claim about her mother passing away from a severe illness all this time was merely a lie. With a cold, emotionless face, Zeno asserted that her mother had met a miserable end that all traitors rightly deserve. The cruel truth caused Chika to completely collapse, her eyes clearly showing terror and pain as she realized her life had inherently been built on lies. Seeing Yuto trying hard to comfort his friend, Zeno immediately threw out a contemptuously sarcastic remark that she was the one who understood Chika better than anyone else in the world. Not letting her steer the narrative, Yuto shouted loudly, demanding Zeno stop beating around the bush and answer clearly what disgusting scheme this liberation of Chika actually was. Zeno coldly demanded Yuto not make her repeat herself, asserting that these schemes were something he would never understand and had nothing to do with him. Standing protectively in front of Chika, Yuto exposed his opponent's scheme by stating she only wanted to use her for the organization's own purposes. With a resolute gaze, he firmly declared that Chika was not a tool and he would not forgive anyone who dared to trample on her future. Zeno lost her patience and ordered the bodyguards to prepare to finish off the group of friends, instantly making the bar's atmosphere suffocating with killing intent. The boss glanced with eyes full of contempt, silently observing her prey as if she already held victory securely in her hands. Facing the terrifying pressure, Yuto gritted his teeth to suppress his anxiety, sweat pouring down as he realized the overwhelming disparity in strength between the two sides. Suddenly, a bodyguard in black closed in and whispered an urgent piece of news into Zeno's ear that made her change her expression in the blink of an eye. Zeno unexpectedly flashed a mysterious smile, nonchalantly declaring that today was indeed a lucky day for Yuto's group. The boss decided to spare their lives this time but did not forget to issue a warning that this leniency would never happen a second time. With a deadly threat, Zeno ordered them never to show their faces in this city again if they still wanted to keep their precious lives. Yuto and Chika stood stunned watching Zeno's back as she silently walked away, clearly feeling a murderous aura spreading throughout the space. Unwilling to let their only clue vanish, the young man hurriedly rushed forward and shouted loudly, demanding the boss stop immediately. But instantly, an iron-hard hand in a black suit suddenly grabbed Yuto's shoulder, stopping all his efforts to advance in the blink of an eye. The elite bodyguard glared at him, threatening him not to be arrogant, and to know how to preserve his own life before it was too late. Yuto was stunned with wide, terrified eyes, inwardly wondering exactly when she had moved and disappeared without him even noticing. Without a word of warning, the bodyguard delivered a crushing, direct punch to Yuto's stomach, creating a massive impact as if aiming to crush his opponent. The young man only had time to let out a miserable cry before feeling all the strength in his body completely vanish under the lethal blow. Yuto collapsed onto the floor and passed out in helplessness, leaving Chika standing frozen in sheer terror as she witnessed her friend being taken down. Witnessing that brutal scene, Yuki furiously roared Yuto's name and swore to make those bastards pay a very steep price. Amidst the tense atmosphere, Hayato hurriedly held his younger sister tightly and sternly reminded her that these people were truly incredibly dangerous monsters. Yuki furiously screamed amidst the rubble, while Hayato struggled to hold his sister back under the watchful eyes of the black-suited bodyguard. Zeno silently approached Chika, smirking as she said she would reveal one final thing to her before leaving. Facing that haunting proposition, Chika could only stand frozen, her face clearly showing extreme confusion and terror. The boss didn't hesitate to close in on her prey, using a cold, sharp gaze to suffocate any remaining will to resist from the young girl. Zeno leaned close to Chika's ear, silently whispering eerie words that instantly made the surrounding atmosphere suffocating. Chika was stunned with wide eyes, completely frozen as she heard the horrific truths just revealed by the boss. Zeno flashed a devilish smile, loudly reminding everyone to mentally prepare because the true Halloween night was only officially beginning now. While Chika remained sunk deep into a melancholic silence, the dark shadows of new schemes began to kindle in her mind. The boss decisively turned her back, leading the team of black-suited bodyguards away, leaving the group of young friends standing helplessly in the middle of the battlefield. The lackeys loudly shouted the order to retreat behind their master, officially bringing the haunting clash at the Death Valley Bar to a close. The quiet atmosphere in the Death Valley Bar was suddenly torn apart by an unusual pressure when uninvited guests abruptly descended. The doors burst open, a squad of armed police suddenly stormed in with a shouted order for everyone to freeze, demanding an immediate lockdown of the entire area. The Special Task Force quickly deployed their tactical formation, their hurried footsteps surrounding every exit to deny anyone the chance to leave the scene. Inspector Kuroiwa stepped in slowly with a stern expression, glancing around before coldly confirming that the Exeedra organization had been clinging to their group all along. Amidst the chaos, the young officer Arai roared, forcing Yuto to stay quiet while warning him not to foolishly make any resistant moves right now. Immediately, he was overpowered by the man's strength and roughly pinned down to the floor, leaving Yuto gritting his teeth in absolute helplessness right in front of Chika. Taking advantage of everyone's attention being drawn to the raid, Zeno quietly moved closer and leaned into Chika's ear to begin pouring in eerie, manipulative words. She smirked, whispering a cruel truth enough to shatter all beliefs, that Chika's mother was actually still alive and was secretly working for the Exeedra organization. The devastating news struck like a bolt of lightning, leaving Chika completely stunned. She bewilderingly repeated the question in despair about whether her mother truly still existed in this world. Extreme doubt and agony engulfed the young girl's mind as she faced the reality that her gentle mother from the past was actually part of a criminal syndicate. Officer Arai pressed Chika on whether she had just said something sketchy, but she could only awkwardly bow her head and softly deny that anything had happened at all. Meanwhile, Inspector Kuroiwa stood quietly observing with a thoughtful gaze, as if he were trying to read the secrets hidden behind the young girl's terrified facade. Outside the bar, the night had completely enveloped the city of Shibuya, where high-rise buildings still shone brightly but harbored a deadly atmosphere waiting to erupt. Police forces tightened their strict control right at the entrances and exits, constantly interrogating and stopping suspicious individuals in search of clues regarding the criminal organization's presence. Even Yuki could not escape the scrutiny when she was stopped by a female officer for inspection, making the edgy girl frown in annoyance at having her personal business obstructed. In the main hall, Yuto's group of friends was surrounded by the strict glares of the investigation team, creating an extremely tense and suffocating confrontation between justice and vigilantes. Inspector Kuroiwa broke the silence with a direct question, pressing Yuto on the real reason that led him and his friends to recklessly venture into the Devil's Lair. He did not evade but frankly admitted his sole objective was to arrange a deal with Exeedra so they would stop putting Chika in danger. That declaration made Arai furiously scold Yuto for his rogue actions and threaten that he wouldn't let it slide if he continued to deeply interfere with the official police investigation. Realizing the argument was going too far, Inspector Kuroiwa had to force a smile to intervene and asked both sides to stay perfectly calm to avoid causing unnecessary trouble. Inspector Kuroiwa turned to look at Chika meaningfully, bringing up her confirmation that Zeno was indeed an old acquaintance of hers. Faced with that inquiry, Chika could only sweat profusely and give a slight nod of admission with extreme anxiety evident on her face. Noticing the abnormality in the young girl's demeanor, Kuroiwa continued to press her on what words that drug lord had poured into her ears to make her waver so much. Chika tremblingly confessed that the woman had planted a haunting threat in her mind, that all her efforts to escape had now become useless. The inspector thoughtfully let out an exclamation, his eyes never leaving the tension-filled faces opposite him in search of a loophole. Suddenly, he brought up a sharp rule of criminal psychology, asserting that when people intentionally lie, their eyes will always unconsciously dart to the left. Chika's shocked reaction and heavy breathing made the atmosphere in the bar feel as if it thickened from the invisible pressure of the police. But right after, Kuroiwa laughed heartily and said he was merely joking around with a little psychological trick to ease the situation. However, his eyes suddenly turned icy cold as he asserted that after many years in the field, he only needed to look into someone's eyes to know he had hit a nerve. He quietly stood opposite Chika, issuing a final request hoping she would honestly confess the entire truth about her intimate relationship with the Exeedra organization. Chika remained in stunned silence before Inspector Kuroiwa's harsh interrogation about the shady connection between her and the crime syndicate. Suddenly Yuki yelled for her brother to complain that these people constantly interrogating them made her feel incredibly annoyed and frustrated. The edgy girl with purple eyes angrily shouted that the police's actions were no different from a crime, invading their privacy and harassing them. Yuki still refused to stop, continuously unleashing her fury with harsh words that made the female officer standing nearby just sigh in exhaustion. Unable to stand his bothersome younger sister, Hayato grumpily scolded Yuki, calling her an idiot and demanding she shut her mouth immediately so he could handle things. Amidst the thick atmosphere, Yuto with burning eyes spoke up to affirm that Chika had absolutely nothing to do with Exeedra and earnestly begged them to trust her. But Officer Arai immediately snapped back with skepticism, asking that if she wasn't involved, why did they claim they came here to bring her back? The image of the cold-blooded assassins of Exeedra bowing respectfully and calling Chika, "Milady," returned like an unshakable, haunting ghost. Yuto gritted his teeth to suppress the surging pain, declaring that this was exactly why they had to throw themselves into danger to investigate the truth. Following up on his friend's words, Hayato furiously yelled in the police's faces that it was their negligence that allowed Exeedra to rise and turn the entire city into a living hell. Officer Arai roughly grabbed Hayato by the collar, gritting his teeth to warn him not to act like a know-it-all about how justice operates right here. In the face of that violent act, Hayato coldly and sarcastically questioned him whether he truly deserved to bear the title of a police officer at all. His eyes burned with indignation as he interrogated the man on whether oppressing the citizens was what a genuine guardian of the law ought to do. In response to that resentment, the young officer merely threw out words of contempt, asserting that his job was to protect honest citizens and not his kind of people. Inspector Kuroiwa once again had to step in and break up the two hotheads, wearily exclaiming that he didn't know how many times he had to do this anymore. He suddenly became serious upon revealing classified intel that the Exeedra organization was secretly preparing for a ruthless scheme on an incredibly massive scale. That shocking news made Chika gasp in bewilderment, seemingly unable to believe that the organization's phantom had returned so quickly. Just then, Zeno's devilish smile along with her reminder of a bloody Halloween night suddenly flashed in her mind like a terrifying omen. Inspector Kuroiwa persistently locked eyes with Chika, once again pressing to see if she was certain she wasn't hiding anything else. Faced with the final inquiry, Chika could only widen her eyes in trembling fear, desperately trying to utter a denial to cover up her own secret. After a tense period of scrutiny, Inspector Kuroiwa finally smiled and accepted the young girl's lie, declaring that for today, he would temporarily trust those eyes. He gently advised the whole group to head home quickly, leaving behind Officer Arai, who was still glaring at the young friends with a look full of dissatisfaction and rage. Outside the Death Valley bar, a gloomy atmosphere shrouded the silent night, much like the hidden mysteries that had yet to find a complete resolution. Yuki angrily clenched her fists, gritting her teeth and growling bitter insults directed at the police force for ruining their entire plan. Hayato let out a weary sigh, complaining about the untimely arrival of the task force, thinking to himself that nobody could have expected this place to be monitored so strictly by the cops. Standing in the middle of the empty street, Yuto glanced thoughtfully, secretly raising a major question in his head about whether the police's appearance today was truly just a mere coincidence. The fragmented pieces began to connect in his mind, sparking a terrifying fear that perhaps all along, The police had been secretly monitoring Chika's every move. That thought made Yuto instinctively turn to look at Chika with an anxious gaze, caringly asking if she was feeling alright after the recent chain of shocking events. Chika hesitated and bowed her head, her eyes wavering violently as she debated whether she should reveal the horrifying secret the female boss Zeno had just whispered in her ear. After a moment of hesitation, the small girl tremblingly confessed the whole cruel truth that Zeno had revealed her late mother was actually still alive and directly involved with the Exeedra organization. Hearing the shocking news, Yuto turned back in astonishment, dumbfoundedly asking Chika if her mother was really still alive. Chika slightly bowed her head, her eyes filled with anxiety as she revealed another crucial detail. The female boss had instructed her to find a certain necklace at all costs. Yuto frowned, his face clearly showing surprise as he repeated the word necklace, seemingly trying to string together the bizarre events that had just unfolded. The image of Zeno with her ghostly smile whispering into Chika's ear appeared hauntingly, along with the confirmation that her mother was still alive and the warning absolutely not to let the organization take that necklace. Chika looked up at Yuto with sorrowful eyes, hesitantly mentioning that her mother's necklace was currently kept at the orphanage, and she began to wonder if all these things were linked together. A rush of questions flooded Yuto's mind as he wondered why people had rumored her mother dead for so long, and then suddenly the phone in his hand unexpectedly buzzed, signaling a call from the director. Extreme panic clearly showed on Yuto's face as he pressed the phone to his ear and received an urgent message demanding him to return immediately. The earth-shattering news that the orphanage had suddenly been attacked made Yuto scream in terror, causing the whole group of friends standing around to skip a beat in shock. Realizing the situation was incredibly urgent, Yuto knitted his brows in utter seriousness, hurriedly apologizing to the Hayato siblings and firmly declaring that they had to split up right here. Before the backs of the two faded into the darkness, Hayato clearly and loudly instructed his close friend to be careful and remember to call them the moment anything bad happened. Yuto dashed through the night, his teeth gritted in sheer fury upon realizing that the evildoers had cowardly attacked the orphanage exactly when his group had just left. His ultimate rage erupted, his Chronos spirit energy surging powerfully, turning his eyes glowing red like a bloodthirsty demon roaring into the morning-tinged sky. Returning to reality, a desolate scene unfolded before his eyes as the dazzling blonde girl from Exeedra was subduing Chika amidst Yuto's desperate screams. Yuto's face was smeared with blood and covered in open wounds, a testament to a terrifying bloody battle that had taken place not long ago. Chika sobbed in tears, desperately begging Yuto to stop and not bring any more pain upon himself for her sake. Ignoring that plea, Yuto channeled all his remaining strength, gaining momentum to leap at a terrifying speed to close in on the target in the blink of an eye. But the red-haired leader of Exeedra merely smirked contemptuously, his sharp, cold eyes flashing with sarcasm as he witnessed that feeble attempt at resistance. The scar-faced assassin standing nearby also cast a slight glance, silently acknowledging Yuto's extraordinary movement speed but still considering it just a hopeless effort. In midair, Yuto threw a punch carrying the power of thunder aimed straight at the enemy, but Shade immediately raised her hand to flawlessly block the strike, creating a fierce aftershock. She gave a slight, savage grin, boldly demanding her comrades to let her personally settle old scores with this insolent brat. The long-haired leader nonchalantly dropped his approval, signaling his subordinate to act as she pleased without showing any mercy. Immediately, Yuto, with his blood-red eyes, swung a punch overflowing with Chronos spirit energy towards the opponent in utter fury. Shade easily dodged the attack by a hair's breadth, coldly mocking that Yuto was slowly being consumed by this very overloaded power. She smirked with absolute confidence, boldly declaring that with his current out-of-control state, he would never even be able to touch her. The female assassin moved incredibly fast, slipping past Yuto's attack, leaving him completely at a dead end against her masterful combat skills. While delivering a devastating kick to her opponent's head, Shade arrogantly boasted about the grueling training regimens under Lord Bacchus. She glided away smoothly, causing Yuto's punch to slam straight into the ground, creating a powerful tremor that shook the entire surrounding space. But suddenly, Yuto unleashed a lightning-fast counterattack that hit dead center, beginning an ironclad assertion about the disparity in their true strength. Shade widened her eyes in shock at the terrifying pressure from Yuto's fist, dead silent upon hearing him declare that the two of them were not in the same league at all. She gritted her teeth, sliding far back to maintain her distance, while shouting a threat at Yuto not to be so hastily cocky just after landing a single blow. Shade smirked arrogantly, declaring that she had completely mastered every single move of her opponent. Hearing the challenge, Yuto fell into a state of extreme rage, his eyes glowing crimson like a demon revealing its true form mid-battle. He let out an earth-shattering roar, his violent aura bursting forth as if the surrounding space was about to explode. Without a moment of hesitation, the young man channeled all his strength into his fist and charged straight ahead like a bloodthirsty beast. A 1,000-pound punch landed squarely on Shade's face, causing her nosebleed to splatter under the terrifying pressure of the Chronos' spiritual energy. The blonde female assassin gritted her teeth, enduring the flesh-tearing pain, her face distorted with rage at this sudden attack. However, she immediately regained her footing, coldly warning Yuto not to be too complacent because she was still holding back so as not to accidentally kill him. With a lightning-fast movement, Shade unleashed a treacherous low kick that made Yuto completely lose his balance and collapse. Not giving her opponent a chance to recover, she brutally stamped her heel hard onto Yuto's body, forcing him to lie flat beneath her feet. Standing there looking down at her completely subdued prey, Shade flashed an arrogant smile to claim victory and hurled insults, calling him a massive fool. The assassin Fald glanced over thoughtfully, asking sarcastically if Yuto really intended to finish him off right in midair. But immediately, Shade rushed in and delivered a powerful high kick, forcing Yuto to concentrate intensely to evade the dangerous strike. The bloody battle erupted fiercely as both of them suddenly leaped high into the air, creating a fiery clash right in the middle of the tense night sky. The blonde female assassin's expression suddenly changed in horror, blood starting to pour from her nose as she realized she had just been hit by an unexpected counterattack. At that exact moment, the Chronos' spiritual energy inside Yuto completely erupted, his eyes glowing blood-red along with a roar that tore through the freezing night. Without letting his opponent regain her composure, Yuto stomped his foot to gain momentum and dashed off like a flash of lightning, determined to crush all of his enemy's arrogance. He channeled all his rage into a barrage of extremely powerful consecutive punches, forcing Shade to brace herself and take the beating in utter helplessness. The steel fist carrying destructive power smashed straight into his opponent's face, creating a terrifying shockwave that shook the entire surrounding space. Shade's purple eyes clearly showed shock mixed with pain. It seemed she still couldn't believe she was being overwhelmed to this extent. The female assassin could only gasp out in despair that this was impossible, before completely collapsing under the young man's wrath. Shade gritted her teeth in resentment, unable to accept that she was gradually losing ground to a mediocre person like Yuto. Observing from behind, the assassin Fald maintained a cold expression, nonchalantly remarking that the young man had actually fallen into a prearranged trap. Despite the warning, Yuto channeled all of his Chronos' spiritual energy into his fist and delivered a thunderous blow right into the front of his opponent. The 1,000-pound punch brutally slammed Shade into the ground, causing the female assassin to only let out a scream full of pain and shock. Witnessing his subordinate being subdued, Fald silently approached with an overwhelming aura, radiating a chilling bloodlust that enveloped the space. He coldly insulted Shade, saying she was worse than a wild beast, and threatened to force her back to the hellish training course from the very beginning. The female assassin lay motionless with a bloody face, her dull purple eyes clearly showing deep humiliation at being looked down upon by her own comrade. Struggling to get up with ragged breaths, she looked tremblingly toward the Exeedra assassin group and uttered a weak denial of her defeat. While choking back tears to apologize, Shade forced herself to declare that she still had enough strength to continue this bloody battle. Despite being covered in injuries, her black-gloved hands secretly fumbled for a mysterious silver bullet in her coat pocket to prepare for a cruel finishing blow. Shade pulled red and white capsules out of her coat pocket and silently let them drop into her trembling palm. She panted exhaustedly with a bloody face, seemingly driven into a corner and forced to make a highly risky decision. Standing opposite her, Yuto, with his eyes glowing red, growled in disdain, inwardly cursing that it really wasn't worth wasting his effort to face a piece of trash like her. Ignoring her pathetic state, Shade coldly declared this to be the worst-case scenario and decisively put the pill into her mouth. The female assassin closed her eyes tightly, swallowing the forbidden drug to forcefully unleash the latent power hidden within her body. The drug flowed down her esophagus with a dry swallow, marking the moment Shade completely abandoned her humanity in exchange for dark energy. Instantly, a massive pressure began to radiate from her body, causing the ground beneath their feet to shake violently to Yuto's astonishment. A pillar of dark purple spiritual energy erupted violently, enveloping Shade's entire body and turning her into a terrifying entity overflowing with malevolent aura. With glowing purple eyes and a cold face devoid of any emotion, Shade now materialized like a true monster ready to crush anyone blocking her path. Witnessing that horrific transformation, Chika and the director could only stand frozen in absolute terror at the tragedy unfolding before them. The female assassin Shade flashed a sly smile with her glowing purple eyes, smugly declaring that she would show everyone what the true way to use power looked like. Facing that immense pressure, Yuto stood motionless with his eyes turned blood red, his breathing rapid as if he was gradually losing his own sanity. Amidst the tense atmosphere, a middle-aged man with long hair and a full beard suddenly revealed himself, carrying the cold aura of a sovereign ruler. Chika was so shocked her heart tightened. She tremblingly called out to her father while Yuto could only gasp in astonishment at the appearance of someone who shouldn't have been there. Standing tall in front of his daughter, the Archdemon Taizen calmly announced that he had officially returned to take her back to the organization. Chika stared blankly at the strange yet familiar man, asking again with a choked voice whether this was truly the father she had always yearned for. Responding to that weakness was a knowing smile from Taizen. He softly remarked that Chika had now grown up and become much more beautiful than in his memories. Amidst the shock of the director and Yuto, everyone couldn't help but wonder, since the truth was supposed to be that he perished in the tragedy 10 years ago. The leader of Exeedra casually explained that his death back then was just a perfect charade so he could hide himself and act more freely in the shadows. His eyes narrowed dangerously, asserting that the plan had been a resounding success as it shook off all the police and helped him come this far today. Taizen stood tall like a mountain blocking their view, making the atmosphere around Chika and Yuto suffocating. Yuto gritted his teeth in fury, his eyes flashing a cold gaze as he faced the sinner standing right before him. He bravely stepped forward to shield Chika, directly facing the terrifying pressure radiating from the powerful man's body. Taizen's eyes narrowed inquisitively. He spoke in a deep voice to confirm whether this was the person named Yuto. Despite his legs trembling from his opponent's authority, Yuto still tried to maintain his combat stance and didn't back down even an inch. Unable to suppress his resentment, he clenched his fist and suddenly rushed straight forward, roaring to demand that he apologize to Chika for the pain he caused. The punch carrying his full erupted strength was thrown at a wind-tearing speed, aiming straight at the target with iron determination. However, a white shadow suddenly intervened as Shade delivered a thunderous kick, stopping Yuto's attack right in midair. The impact force was so strong it blew Yuto away, while the female assassin flashed a sarcastic smile and warned him never to dare ignore her presence. Collapsing on the ground with a numb arm, Yuto gritted his teeth in pain as he realized he was still too weak before the true monsters of the organization. Yuto fell to his knees in astonishment, screaming to demand that the opponent stop that crazy action immediately. But the Archdemon Taizen completely ignored him, brutally grabbing Chika's hair despite the poor girl crying and begging to be let go. His white bandaged hand gripped her hair mercilessly, showing the ultimate cruelty of a father toward his own biological child. Witnessing that offensive sight, Yuto stood up in fury and yelled to ask what the hell he thought he was doing. Taizen glanced back with contempt, coldly remarking that Yuto was truly a troublesome fellow before calling out Shade's name to prepare to make a move. He continued to order Fall to quickly eliminate this thorn in their side, but didn't forget to remind him absolutely not to kill him. Upon receiving the order, the female assassin Shade clicked her tongue with a dejected expression, complaining that having to hold back was truly a form of torture. She shrugged to express her annoyance at not being able to unleash her full strength to finish off the prey in the quickest manner. However, a wild smile suddenly bloomed on Shade's lips as she inwardly thought of a deeply cruel plan of torture. She dashed toward Yuto like a whirlwind, asserting that as long as he was still alive, she could break him to the point that he would never be able to move again. Yuto felt the killing intent approaching from behind and quickly turned his head, but it was already too late to react before the looming appearance of the giant Fald. Taking advantage of that opening, the female assassin Shade delivered a powerful downward strike from above, aiming straight at the head of the prey who had completely lost his balance. Without giving his opponent a chance to catch his breath, a giant black-gloved hand suddenly reached out, squeezing Yuto's body with a terrifying crushing force. The butcher Fald completely overwhelmed the young man by pinning him down with his body weight, leaving him entirely helpless under the enemy's feet. In a momentary burst of strength, the assassin delivered a powerful finishing blow that created a shockwave shaking the entire surrounding ground. Yuto could only let out a cry of pain as blood trickled from the corner of his mouth, clearly feeling every muscle fiber in his body gradually shattering. Fald silently stood looking at his dying prey beneath his feet, his emotionless gaze like a silent death sentence for anyone who dared block the way. Even though his body had reached its limit, Yuto still tried to stand up with his remaining strength, his eyes still burning with the determination to protect the girl he loved. But reality was too cruel as Fald once again rushed forward like a phantom, delivering a direct 1,000-pound punch to the face that made Yuto completely lose his bearings. The horrifying impact force sent him flying into the stone wall behind him, shattering it into pieces, while Yuto could only clutch his heavily injured face in absolute despair. Shade looked down at Yuto with a disappointed expression, sarcastically asking if he had really collapsed so easily right when the battle had just begun. Observing from behind, Taizen silently watched the poor prey who had been backed into a corner with no escape by his two trusted subordinates. He suddenly reached out to grab Chika and coldly ordered her to follow him home, leaving the young girl shocked as she questioned the true meaning of those words. Despite her weak resistance, Shade and Fald immediately closed in and brutally restrained Chika's arms to carry out the coercion. Chika gritted her teeth in choked resentment, her eyes showing clear pain and unwillingness as she had to look at her only friend who was dying. Taizen was completely unmoved by the tears. He asserted that she had an ultimate duty to fulfill and demanded that she remain silent and obey. The group from the Exeedra organization gradually walked away, leaving Yuto lying motionless in the middle of the empty courtyard like a forgotten defeated warrior. On the path being dragged away, Chika painfully looked back at Yuto's figure one last time, her heart gradually breaking due to her own helplessness. She screamed in despair, pressing to know what they really wanted to do with her, and why they needed her presence so much. Taizen silently stepped into the mystical night with an overwhelming aura, only leaving behind a crazed declaration that all of this was to save this world. Chika screamed in resentment, asking Taizen how, after all the horrific crimes he had committed, he still dared to nonchalantly open his mouth and say such things. Facing his daughter's rage, the archdemon still coldly maintained that everything he did was for highly critical research. He smirked triumphantly, declaring that it was time for the world to witness the brilliant results of those bloody experiments. Unable to accept the cruel sophistry, Chika loudly questioned if he knew how many lives had been lost, and how many people were still suffering because of his hands. Taizen rolled his eyes, revealing madness as he tossed out a challenging answer that no one could determine such a thing. While Yuto was still watching helplessly from afar, the butcher Fald suddenly reached out and grabbed Chika tightly, causing the young girl to be utterly terrified. Taizen continued to preach that sacrifice was inevitable to change history, making Chika painfully realize that her father had used her mother's own research for evil purposes, and she pressed to know where she currently was. The leader of Exeedra confirmed that her mother was still alive, but currently, she was no longer walking the same path as him. Her hatred reaching its peak, Chika screamed directly into Taizen's face that perhaps her mother was so disgusted that she decided to leave a cold-blooded man like him. His pride wounded, Taizen swung his hand and delivered a thunderous slap that knocked Chika down, while Yuto could only scream her name in absolute despair. Taizen leaned close to Chika's face, smirking sarcastically to ask since when she had become so stubborn. Faced with the cruelty and oppression of her demonic father, the young girl could only stand frozen in extreme terror. In the back, Yuto was trying to get up with a face full of wounds, asking in resentment who these people were to dare come here and destroy everything. Watching Chika being tortured right before his eyes, his heart tightened, causing the rage in his heart to erupt beyond control. Yuto's eyes suddenly turned an eerie glowing red, signaling a surge of dark power that was gradually awakening and consuming his mind.